Okay, I think I'm now ready. Sorry, guys. All right, there we go. So let's see here. Looks like you guys can hear me. Okay, good morning, everyone. I think it's Monday. All right. Does anybody have any questions on what we went over in class on Monday? Any questions on Monday? No. Did you do your homework? Did you read chapter 1 in the yellow book and then take the test on page 132 in the white book? And then did you grade the test? Okay, go ahead and grade it real quick using, this is going to be page 152 in your book. So those of you who did not grade it, take a minute to grade it because I'm going to ask for your scores in just a minute. I'm going to go down my list and I'm going to read your name and ask you how you did. Now you can tell me how many you missed. That's fine. This page is a grading scale that tells you if you missed 1, you got a 95. If you missed 2, you got a 90 and so on. So you can either give me the number. She had a question. Okay, I'll talk about that in just a minute. Yeah, it's not something that you need to understand for the test, but I will explain it. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, so Jillian, how did you do? Is Jillian here? Not here. Shaylin? Okay. How about if I give you guys just a minute to finish grading and then I'll go through this. I was literally finishing these slides up at 6 o'clock this morning. So that's why I'm late. I kind of got delayed. Explaining your role. Because these questions are designed to determine whether you're going to follow your role or whether you're going to think. So the questions are going to be presented in a very similar manner. And there's going to be an answer that gets you to act like a nurse, because we don't want that. Because remember, when we start making decisions, we end up hurting the patient. So some of these questions are going to be tricky like that. They're going to try to get you to make a decision or take an action or something like that. And that's not our role. So you have to really kind of be careful. And if you download that ebook, right, the very first thing I talk about is know your role. Your role is super important, and you're going to see that on the test quite a bit. Bernice, thank you. Gianna, thank you. Jessica, thank you. Cynthia, thank you. JC.
I chose to answer the first.
All right. Rachel, thank you. Amber. Okay. All right. So on chapter 1, is there anything that you missed that you're not sure why? Are there any questions that you missed that you want me to go over with you? Or do you know why the right answer?
I didn't miss anything, but I just had a question about number 6.
Okay.
I was a little hesitant, but I still got that. Number 6 question was if you make a mistake while documenting, you should. And I selected A, but I also made like my own little notation and initial. That's what I was taught.
Okay.
Or is that just extra?
So when you're answering these questions, you have to evaluate 2 things. Okay. Number 1, what is the question asking? And number 2, what is each answer saying? Okay. So that it's, even though it's one question, there's actually kind of 2 parts to this. So the first one is, if you make a mistake, you should. So that means that one of these are not. Okay. So then you have to look at the answers. So number 1, draw 1 line through it. Maybe. Let's keep going. Number 2, throw away the page. So that was actually in your reading, right? So that can't be the right one. Number 3, use white and not allowed. So that can't be the right answer. Number 4, erase it. Well, we're writing in pen. Can't erase it. So that can't be the right answer. So now we're just left with the first answer. And while it may not be the complete answer, it is the only one that works with this question. Okay. Does that make sense? Well, the complete answer is you draw a line through it, you initial it, you probably write error above it. But the point of this question is not to, if they wanted to know all the actions required, it would say what actions are, which of the following actions are required. It would present the question in a way, I'm trying to think of how it would be worded. It would present a question in a way that would include multiple actions. That's not what this is asking. Okay. This is just, it's actually what we call a negative question. You're showing that whiteout is not required, showing that you can't throw the page away. You're showing, right? So we're showing what actions are not allowed. And that's really what the question is about. That identify all the correct answers, actions you would take if you made a mistake. It's asking you, can you identify by exclusion what actions you're not allowed to do? Okay, does that make sense? So a different way that this would be worded, which is something that you're comfortable with or more familiar with, is which of the following actions is not allowed when you make a mistake, right? So that would be a different way of wording this question, and that would change the answer. Does that make sense? Okay. So when you're answering the written test questions, it's really important that you don't add anything in. You don't change the parameters. The question is exactly what they're asking, period. There's no other options out there. There's not an E, F, G, or H. You've only got A, B, C, and D to work with. So you can't add stuff in. So when you're looking at this question and you're thinking, well, yes, we do draw a line through it, but We also have to initial, we have to write error, and this doesn't tell us to do that. You're adding all of that in. Does that make sense? When you're looking at this question, you're putting more conditions on it. That's not what it's asking. It's not asking what are all of the steps you would take when you make a mistake. So be careful not to add things into the question. Good? Does that make sense? I know negative questions are really hard because most of the time they don't give you the whole story. So what they're trying to do is get you to exclude the 3 that don't work. Okay, good. So let me answer your question. What is the difference between subacute care and outpatient care? So again, you don't have to know. Nobody on the test is going to ask you what is subacute care. There's no test question out there like that. There's not going to be anything that says your patient is receiving care in a subacute care facility. What actions would you expect to perform? They're not going to have anything like that. But I do want you to understand a little bit because it has to do with your work setting. Okay. So let's start at the top. Let's start at hospital. So you become acutely ill or you get injured, you go to the hospital. We are treating an immediate problem, short-term, immediate problem. That is acute care. Okay, short-term, immediate problem. I fall, I break my ankle, I go to the ER, acute care. But when I get there and I'm receiving care, they find out that, yes, I broke my ankle, but I broke it so bad that now I need surgery and pins and needles and plates and external hardware, and they're going to Humpty Dumpty me back together again, right? So I have surgery and I get all of this stuff. Well, I'm probably not going to go home because nobody at home knows how to care for this, right? So, and I can't stay in the hospital for very long because remember, that's acute care. This is no longer a short-term situation that needs to be stabilized. They did their job. So I can't stay there anymore and I can't go home. I got to go somewhere, right? So no, it wouldn't be outpatient. So then I would go to a subacute care setting, like a rehab. Okay. So it's where I'm going to receive longer term management, but not, but the condition is expected to last longer than acute. Okay. So it's longer treatment. Good. Now, subacute can, it's just a type of healthcare. It's saying that it's a long-term condition. Okay. Expected to take longer to treat. Acute care, short-term conditions take shorter to treat, those two. Now, you can have different settings in either one of those topics, okay? So acute care, we think hospitals, but there's other acute care locations like walk-in clinics, right? I'm not going to stay there, but it's going to provide immediate care for a short-term problem. So where people kind of fall short here is they think that all settings have to plug into a specific topic, and they don't. They kind of flow in and out. So instead of trying to figure out or remember, okay, hospitals is acute care, nobody cares. Nobody's going to ask you that question. Instead of thinking about it in that term, think about it more along the lines of short-term care for immediate problems, longer-term care. So if we have longer-term care, which would be subacute, right? So if we have somebody who had a stroke and is receiving care at home, that would be subacute to stabilize an immediate problem. Make sense? Okay. Then we have outpatient care. Now, outpatient care is something totally different. So if you're trying to put it in the same category, it's like saying fruits and vegetables, right? They're both good for you, but they're two totally different things. Make sense? So outpatient care is something totally different. Outpatient care is care that does not require an overnight stay. So could you get outpatient care in a hospital? Sure. Could you get outpatient care in a doctor's office? Should you get, yeah, because you're not staying overnight. Could you get outpatient care in a physical therapy location? Could you get outpatient care in a mental treatment facility? But you probably could also get inpatient care at a medical or a mental health treatment facility if they keep you overnight. So inpatient, you stay overnight. Outpatient, you don't. So there are different ways of categorizing the different types of care we provide. So you've got acute and subacute, you've got inpatient and outpatient. It's just different ways of categorizing. Nobody cares. And in our current medical system, the lines are really blurred with that, because you can have a nursing home that has a rehab wing on it. Now, the nursing home is where they live. They actually live there. The rehab, they're not living there. They're staying there, but their plan is to go home. So they don't live there. So same building, two different types of care. Right. So it would be subacute care for the rehab and long-term care for the nursing home side. Same building. So this is where the lines really get blurred. Nobody's going to ask you that on the test. But you do need to have an awareness of the fact that healthcare can be provided short-term in a lot of settings. It can be provided intermediate term in a lot of different settings, and it can be provided long-term in a lot of different settings, depending on what the patient needs. Does that make sense? Okay. So, but don't get real caught up and make flashcards on subacute, acute. No, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Were you able to get into the course?
Part of it, yes. I just need to see you after class.
Okay.
Work out some of the bugs yet.
Okay. All right. You're welcome. Good. Okay. See me after class and I'll go in and look and make sure. Okay. I have to verify your email address.
It just stays on that same page and then it'll like revert back to that same page.
Okay. We'll look at that. See me after class. Everybody that's having login issues, see me after. All right. So any other questions before we get started on today's lesson? Okay. How do we know? Oh, thank you, Jillian. I appreciate it. Jillian, if you could in the chat, put how many you missed on chapter 1 if you graded it. Okay, so how do we know what to do with each patient? Care plan. So when we're going to do any skill, what's the very first? So let's go to page 66. The skill we're going to learn to do today. Provide mouth care. Not a hard skill. How many guys have brushed your teeth this year? Okay. More than qualified to brush somebody else's. Process is dry off. I mean, process is the same. It's not much to teach you here. But when we're doing it on control, so although we know how to brush our own teeth, there are part you guys already know how to do that. I'll show you, but you guys already know how to brush teeth. Okay. That's why I start with this one, because it's something you do for yourselves on a pretty regular basis. It's something that's not foreign. Now we're going to get into some foreign ones a little later, but we're going to start with familiar. So if you look at the top of page 66 here, it says a resident with natural teeth is lying in bed and needs mouth care. So let's stop there for a second. Care plan says the resident is lying in bed. Now, I'm going to tell you these testing care plans are designed to give you more information than you would get in a clinical setting. They are designed to make the test easy. Now, a lot of you, when you think tests, you're automatically geared up for curveballs and trick questions and how are they trying to fail me? And that's not what this test is. The way that the test is structured, and this is actually in our statutes. So nobody can, this is a law, a real law. So they can't override this. The state test is designed to determine minimal skills competency. Minimal. So can you do this skill well enough to not kill somebody? That is what they're grading you on. Not, are you the best mouth care giver in the whole United States? Right? We're not proving that we are masters at this. That's not what this is. This is, can you perform this skill and not kill that patient? If you can, yay, we can let you loose on the public because you will get better as you go. But we have to make sure that while you're getting better, you're not killing patients. Good? Makes sense? So set your standards down just a little bit from where they are right now, because you're probably thinking, I have to be absolutely perfect, and you don't. That's not what this is about. Now, I will tell you, if I'm the body in the bed, I'd like you to be perfect, please. So practice this as much as you need to, but don't stress yourself out with trying to be perfect for the test. Okay, just kind of set your sights a little bit lower and breathe. But these care plans are designed because it's minimal level of competency, right? The bar is way down here. So this care plan is going to give us a whole lot more information than we would actually get in a clinical setting. So no clinical setting anywhere is going to tell you this patient is lying in bed and needs mouth care. They don't know where the patient's going to be day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, right? So your care plans in a clinical setting aren't going to say that. The reason that this care plan does is because all testing has to be consistent across all testing locations. So if you're testing in Miami and you get mouth care, and you're testing in Jacksonville and you get mouth care, and you're testing in Tallahassee and you get mouth care, and you're testing in Miami and you get mouth care, it has to be the exact same scenario. Because otherwise, one of you guys could claim discrimination because your scenario was harder. Does that make sense? So just like you have to follow the care plan, do you know who else has to follow that care plan? Everybody else, like the evaluators. So when you're doing this skill, the evaluator is going to put a live patient in bed laying flat, because our care plan says the resident is lying in bed. Now, I know it's a real live patient skill, because if I look at the bottom of the page, it tells me that. You're not going to do mouth care on a mannequin. They don't rinse very well. Okay. So a resident with natural teeth is lying in bed and needs mouth care. That's us. We can do that because it's an ADL. The resident is not able to provide their own mouth care. That's kind of important, because if they were able to do their own mouth care, would I be in there doing it? No, no. I don't do tasks on anybody that can do them on themselves. First of all, it's awkward, it's weird. But second of all, it reduces independence. And we need a certain of independence for our own psychological well-being. But it also reduces activity. Can you imagine if tomorrow morning you woke up and you didn't have to do a thing for yourself? All you had to do was lay in bed, and everybody brought you food, brushed your teeth, cleaned you up, took care of your toileting needs, got you dressed, and you didn't do anything. You just laid there, right? Now that might sound like an ideal vacation, but after a little while, your muscles are going to get super sore. Why? Because you're not moving. Yeah, you're not moving. So if you stay in one position for too long and you don't move, your muscles actually become sore. It affects your circulation. It affects your nervous system. It affects your breathing, your digestion. It'll even affect your mental health. So when we are dealing with patients, we really want to encourage independence wherever possible so that the patient gets a little activity and feels a little more independent so we can avoid all of those complications. Remember the RN assessment, real problems and potential problems. And that is a potential problem. So you would not have a care plan that tells you to do mouth care if the patient can do it themselves. Now, this care plan says they can't. So we're setting expectations very, very clearly for the test. Make sense? Good. Okay. Below that, here we have supplies. Now, don't look at your book. Don't look at your book. Don't look up here. What kind of things would you need to brush teeth? Okay. Toothpaste, toothbrush. What? Basin, somewhere to spit. Okay. Towel to protect their clothing. Gloves, sure. If we're going to use it, yeah. Mouthwash. How are they going to rinse? Oh, we need a cup of water. Okay. You just recited all of the supplies. So I want to make that pretty clear to you. A lot of students get all freaked out over supplies. I have to memorize all these supplies. Guys, you already know them. It's mouth care. What do you need to brush teeth? Right? Make the supplies make sense to you. Don't try to memorize this random list of stuff. Make it relevant to the skill. And that'll help you learn the supplies. Okay. In the online course, I actually have a supply shelf and you click on the items that you need for that particular skill. And if you get them all right, it's going to tell you. If you get any of them wrong, it'll let you know. So it's a way of learning the supplies pretty quickly. Okay. We're going to talk about supplies in a few minutes, but they're always listed at the top of the page here. Now, here are step-by-step instructions on how to perform the skill. Okay. I take all the guesswork out. If you take this home, and you have a live human read each one of these steps and you do it, you're guaranteed to do it exactly the way that's necessary for the state exam. Once you've done the skill once or twice, you don't want somebody to read all these steps to you anymore. Now you want to do the skill and just have them identify if you've missed anything. Okay. Or let you know when you get stuck what the next step is. So have you ever been in school and they tell you go home and practice and you get home and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I doing it right? I don't know. Practice is not practice if there's no feedback. That's what this book does. It gives you the feedback you need when I'm not with you. Good? Make sense? Okay, so step-by-step instructions. You should be able to complete these 5 questions once we're done with the lesson. But in order to learn this skill, it's just mouth care. But there's some things that we have to learn along the way. Some things that are a little bit different when we're doing it on other people. And that's what we're going to focus on for the next little bit here. Not so much brushing teeth, although I'm going to show you that as well. It's more all the extra stuff when you're doing it on other people. Good? Make sense? All right. So let's go. Well, you don't need to go here. This is an activity of daily living. Remember, these are activities we do on ourselves every day. And remember that CNAs do ADLs. That's what we do is ADLs. So this is well within our scope of practice. But remember that mouth care is an activity of daily living. This is the checkpoints that you need to complete in order to be successful at this skill. These are not all of the checkpoints, though. So let me show you something. Okay, You guys remember this? Right? Look how much green is on there. Look how much red is on there. So that means the opening and the closing is going to take up a significant part of this skill. But if you look at the things that are white, the ones that are not checked off, you know, that don't have any color on them, there's several steps there. There's lots of steps that we're going to have to do that are related specifically to mouth care. All of those steps are what is here. Okay. So we're going to do the opening because that's how we're going to get our green ones checked off. We're going to do the closing because that's how we're going to get the red ones checked off. We're going to do these steps because that's how we're going to get skills specific checked off. But there's a couple of other steps on here, a couple other colors that we haven't talked about yet, like glove rules, barrier rules, linen rules, and basin cleaning. Okay. So you'll see, if you look on here, you'll see a pink box. You'll see a light blue box. You'll see a yellow box, right? So we have to talk about those principles, and we're going to learn it once, and we're going to do them over and over and over again. Good. So we're going to come back to this in a few minutes, but let's just look at these, just do a high level overview. Our patient must be sitting fully upright. Well, a care plan says they're laying in bed. So what do you think we need to do before we start the skill? Okay, so you can either get him sitting up, right? If they're able to sit up on the side of the bed, you could do that. If not, we're going to put the head of the bed up. For the test, we're just going to put the head of the bed up. Okay. Now, these beds cannot be accused of being fast by any stretch of the imagination. So give me a second here. Let me get this hooked up and I will show you what I mean. All right. Pretty cool. Okay. So if I want to put the head of the bed up, and I'm going to be working with this patient right here, and I want to put the head of the bed up. What does that mean? Okay, if I want to put the head of the bed up, we have to look at two different things. Okay, the first is how far up does the head of the bed need to go? And the second thing is, when do I put the head of the bed up? So the first part I want to talk to you about is, this is super slow. Like when I press this button right here, this arrow that's pointing up at the top, that means I'm working the head of the bed. So when I press this, the head of the bed is going to go up. This is slow. We could play checkers in the time it takes to get the head of the bed up. I mean, this is slow. Now, it's slow on purpose because if our patient is dizzy or nauseous or in pain, we don't want something that's moving fast. It's going to be slow on purpose. But I probably am going to get to this point and go, oh, yeah, that's good enough, because I'm tired of pressing the button. I want to move on with my life, right? So I'm going to try to shortcut this. You can't shortcut this. The patient must be in a full upright sitting position. This is not a full upright sitting position. So you got to kind of short circuit your brain and not let it get bored. So we're going to keep pressing this button until the bed stops moving. Now the motor will still run. See how the motor is running, but the bed is no longer moving? It's not like cartoons where it's going to clamshell shut or eject the patient, right? It doesn't do that. It just simply stops moving. And that way, you know, it's at its stopping point. This is a full upright sitting position. So you've got to press the button until the head of the bed stops. Does that make sense? That's a testing checkpoint. But there's a problem here because this pillow that's behind the head, it's very comfortable when you're laying down, but when you're sitting up, having a pillow behind your head, forcing it forward, this is not a safe position for mouth care. So we've got to address this pillow. The best thing to do is ask the patient to lean forward a little bit. Now, I know this is a mannequin, but we're going to treat her like a real lady. We're not going to do this, right? We're going to put our hand on her upper back and help her sit forward and pull that pillow down behind her back. Now, you see how that's more of an upright position. Now, if she's got a big tummy or had surgery, this may not be comfortable behind the back. So we can just take it off the bed. That's fine. But you're going to address that pillow behind the head. It either needs to go down or off the bed. Good? Make sense? Okay. Now we have to talk about when we put the head of the bed up. So who touches these controllers? Everybody. Patients can touch them, families can touch them. So what did we decide about the privacy curtain? Is it clean or dirty? Dirty. So if we put the head of the bed up, we don't want to do it after we've washed our hands if we're going to touch it with our bare hands. Does that make sense? So we really should put the head of the bed up before we wash our hands, just like closing the privacy curtain. We're going to do it before we wash our hands. Now, chances are, though, you're going to forget for the test because our opening is always done the same way, right? Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patti. I'm your CNA today. How are you? I'm here to do mouth care. Is that okay? Close curtain, wash hands, get supplies, right? We're in this mindset. Just forget to put the head of the bed up. It's okay. I'm going to give you a strategy. If you forget to put the head of the bed up during your opening, just come over here, grab a single paper towel, and then you can use that paper towel between your finger and it solves the problem. You're going to put the head of the bed up before you wash your hands, ideally, or use paper towel if it's a pillow has to happen after you've washed your hands. Because remember that checkpoint we talked about on Monday? Refrain from touching patient until clean. Good? Make sense? Okay, so 2 things to remember about putting the head of the bed up. It has to go all the way up. Don't get bored. And you want to make sure that you prevent cross-contamination with the controller. Good? Any questions on that? No? Okay. So one of our okay. Hold on. Okay. Can you just swing that camera around? See that handle right there? Just swing that camera around so it's kind of pointing at me, please. I'm gonna make you the honorary camera. Thank you. I'll have to work on that. For some reason, it's not working. Okay, so we must be sitting fully upright for this on Monday. I said when you're standing over the sink at home brushing your teeth, all that foam falls in the sink. But when we're brushing somebody's teeth and they're in bed, that foam is going to fall here. So we do want to protect the clothing with a towel or a paper towel or something. Grab something. There's no checkpoint that's specific. Just put something on them to protect their clothing. Now, this is a brush before applying toothpaste. Remember when we talked about hand washing? And I said you had to wet your hands before you put soap on. Same concept here. We have to wet the brush before we put the toothpaste on. Otherwise, it kind of stays clumpy and doesn't distribute across the mouth very well. Okay? We're going to brush all surfaces and tongue. Duh. That's what mouth care is. And we're going to allow the patient to rinse and spit. This next one, though, is the one that most people miss. Leave residents face brushing somebody else's teeth. You know there's an evaluator grading you. So you brush, you rinse, you have them rinse, you spit, and you are now in cleanup mode. You're going to take all sitting there dripping. Don't forget to look at the patient. Always about the patient. That statement is designed to get you to start paying attention to the patient rather than what you're doing. It's not about your task. It's about the patient. Good? Makes sense? Now, you don't have these in your book. This banner, you do not have instructions on page 66 that this comes on page 17, but not this. This, however, is in our flashcards. So if you want these, you have to get the flashcards to get these. But you can always watch this replay. And in the online course, I'm putting these into the online course as well. Okay, good. Questions? All right, guys. So we're going to move on now to learning about gloves, because you will need gloves for this particular skill. This is going to be on page 26 of your skills book. And I am going to sit for this part of the lecture. Okay. Okay. So I have a whole lecture on this. Anybody that wants to go watch the video, remember at the top of the page, if there's that little video clapboard, that means there's a video on it. I'm not going to show you the video in class. I'm going to talk to you about it instead. But there is a video on this. Now, one of the kind of pitfalls to medical training is that a lot of people think that wearing gloves for everything is the right move. And it's actually not. If you're wearing gloves for everything, you will be told during the test not to do that. You'll actually be stopped from doing it on the test. Well, if that's how you think about infection control and they're not letting you do that, that messes up your whole workflow. So we have to learn a little bit about when gloves are appropriate, how to wear them, how to take them off properly, but more importantly, why it's not a good policy to wear them all the time without thinking. So in order to understand why, I'm going to give you a little demonstration here that has nothing to do with healthcare. Okay. So we are going to build a sandwich. So if we're going to build a place where they build a sandwich in front of you, right? They got all the stuff laid out, this little sneeze guard thing, and you tell them what you want, and they build the sandwich. Well, what do they always put on before they build your sandwich? Gloves, and you feel better about that, don't you? Because you don't want them touching your food. So let's build a sandwich together. So we put on our gloves. So I'm going to build the sandwich. You guys are going to tell me how to do this. So I'm going to put on my food service gloves, and we are going to get some bread. So what kind of bread do you want? White, wheat, Italian? White. So I'm going to get into this little bread cart, and I got to move that plastic thing away and grab a loaf of bread, and I'm going to put it on the counter, and then we're going to use the knife that's sitting there and cut that bread, right? Sounds good so far. Okay, how about some mayo? Mayonnaise? I'm going to reach into that mayonnaise container where that little spreader thing is sticking out. I'm going to grab some mayo and I'm going to spread it out on the. So I'm going to pick up some honey mustard container, tap it on the thing and squirt some honey mustard on there, put the container back. Okay. Bacon. Do we want bacon? Bacon? Okay. So I'm going to open up the cooler. I'm going to grab the package of bacon, open the package, and grab a couple of slices of bacon, and I'm going to put it on the bread. Sounds good so far. I'm hungry. I didn't have breakfast this morning. All right. Yeah, by the time we're done here. Okay, what kind of meat? Ham, roast beef, little of everything? Little of everything? Okay, so I'm going to open up the meat, the little refrigerator under the counter, and I'm going to grab some turkey, some ham, and some roast beef. And they're in those little, single sandwich packages. So I unwrap it, take the wrapper off, throw that in the trash, and put the meat on the bread. So, oh, this is sounding good. I'm hungry. Should we maybe add some cheese to this? Absolutely. Yeah, so cheese. So we're going to get into the cheese drawer and look for cheese, but there's no cheese in the cheese drawer. The cheese, what kind of cheese do we want? Provolone. And we're out of provolone in the cheese drawer. So we're going to walk to the walk-in cooler and go inside, and we're going to open up the little container that has a cheese, but oh, there's no provolone in there either. So we're going to go to the deli counter and grab a block, and we're going to slice that cheese, right? So we've sliced the cheese and we're putting it on our sandwich. And do we want this toasted? Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, this is going to be a really good sandwich. We got bacon on there. We got meat. We got cheese. It's got to be toasted. So we're going to put the sandwich on the little, the paper thing, and we're going to put that on the paddle, and we're going to put the paddle into the toaster, but we got to wait a minute because it's being used. So we're probably going to lean on the counter because, man, it's been a long day, right? And then it's our turn. So we're going to put the sandwich in, we're going to press the buttons, turn the dial, and we're going to stand there and wait and wait and wait. Ding, it's done. So we're going to use that paddle to take it out, and we're going to put it on the counter. Now it's time for toppings. So would you like some lettuce? So I'm going to reach my hand in, grab a thing of lettuce and spread it on the sandwich, right? How about some tomato? So I'm going to reach over, grab some tomato, kind of let it drip a little bit. We're going to put that on the sandwich. What about some pickles? Garlic pickles? Those are the best. So I'm going to get the garlic pickles, kind of squeeze them out, put those on there. How about some olives? Onions? No? Peppers? Okay. All right. So we're going to reach in and get all of our veggies and put it whatever we want on that sandwich, right? And then I'm missing some slides here. Okay. I'm missing some slides. So I've got all of my veggies on there. This is what happens at 6 o'clock in the morning, guys, not enough coffee. Put all my veggies on there. And then I'm going to pick up that knife that we used originally to cut the bread. And I'm going to cut that sandwich in half, fold it over, and I'm going to wrap the sandwich up, each half, in a different paper wrapper. And I'm going to either take it over to the cash register or put it in a bag and hand it to you, depending on where you're at, right? And then you're going to go pay for that sandwich. Now, along the way, I might even grab a cup and hand it to you, or grab a cookie and hand it to you, or I could maybe even take your money without really being aware of what I'm touching. So at the very beginning of this, you felt really good about them wearing gloves, because you didn't want them to touch your sandwich. You thought that was a good action.
That's serious now. Right, that's my biggest pet peeve. You can pay yourself through. Right, like I can get somewhere else. Touch the door, touch the toaster. Too much.
It should be differently.
Right. Right. If you hand that to me, I'm just gonna look at you. Can you please make that over?
Okay, the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that sandwich.
Oh.
And by the way, this was a real extra. I physically stood there, ordered the sandwich, and took those pictures. And I ate that sandwich.
She wearing gloves the whole time?
Well, exactly the way you saw it.
Really?
Yes. And why did I eat that sandwich? Because I have a healthy working immune system that requires a little bit of working out from time to time to stay in tip-top shape. So there's nothing wrong with this. Okay. But I want to get you to look at things a little bit differently, because there's a big difference between somebody making a sandwich in a controlled food environment and somebody handling infectious waste in a medical environment. The point is that when you wear gloves without thinking about it, you stop thinking about it. And cross-contamination happens. Does that make sense? While this is okay in a food setting, it is absolutely not okay in a medical setting. So this sandwich was good. There was nothing wrong with it. You can continue eating sandwiches. It's okay. Don't get me started on buffets. So here's the thing that we have to understand. Gloves do not do what you think they do. And that's why I use this illustration, because gloves do not do what you think they do. Let's look at all the things that these gloves touch. Okay. So we thought those gloves were going to keep our sandwich safe. That's what we thought going into this exercise. We didn't want the person making the sandwich to touch our sandwich. But the problem is that the sandwich maker touched the outside of the bread cart, touched the knife, touched the mayonnaise spreader, the juice or the sauce bottles, the bacon package, the cheese drawer, the drawer handle, the containers inside the cooler, the slicing machine, the table, the toaster oven controls, the paddle, the lettuce, tomato, and other toppings, and the wrapper. And on top of that, probably bags or money or other things along the way, right? So although we thought those gloves were doing something good, all they were doing was keeping the health or the sandwich maker safe from touching the sandwich. Is that really a danger? Not really. So we have to start thinking about, okay, wait a minute, why are we wearing gloves? And are they really doing what we expect them to do? And this is super important in healthcare. And that's what we're going to talk about now, is glove use. So first thing I need to explain to you is gloves are not the magic suit of armor you think they are. So, and I'll prove it to you. You never take anything anybody says at face value. Make sure that there's something to back it up, right? So let me prove this to you. Anybody ever see a birthday balloon? You know, the helium filled rubber balloons kind of bop up against the ceiling for a couple days. What happens to those balloons after a couple days? So how does that happen? Right? Because when we blow the balloons up, the helium is inside the balloon. It stays there. But over time, that helium somehow does something because the balloon shrinks. Well, latex, which is what those balloons are made out of, same stuff your gloves are made out of, right? Latex is a man-made material that has holes in it. Now the holes are tiny, microscopic, you can't see them. But when we put helium in that balloon and the material stretches, what happens to those holes? They expand. So that helium over time can wiggle its way out through those holes. Make sense? Okay. And that's how the balloon deflates. Well, hold up. I just told you your gloves have holes. Those gloves are not the magic suit of armor you think they are. So if you're wearing gloves to keep your hands from becoming contaminated, that's like the sandwich maker wearing gloves so that they don't have to touch the meat. The meat is not a danger. Does that make sense? Okay. Those gloves are still going to let pathogens in. They're not doing what you think they're doing. And that's actually not why we're wearing gloves. Those gloves, while you think they're there to protect you, and they do provide an extra layer of protection, that's not really why you're wearing them. So let's talk about this guy here. Okay. This lady came in, she had to have a hip replacement. She had developed an infection, a surgical site infection. She's on IV antibiotics. She's a mess, absolute mess. And she is in this room. Now, she's had a surgery and she has an infection. Her immune system currently clocking in some major hours. All right, her immune system is basically at its peak performance, can't handle anymore. And we put another patient in that bed right over there who has C. diff, which is an intestinal infection. We don't know the patient has C. diff yet. Don't know because they haven't been diagnosed. Like, we don't have scanners yet that you can walk through, flashing lights, tell you exactly what's wrong with you, right? It doesn't happen. So we have to wait for you to develop symptoms, and we got to figure out what the symptoms mean. Then we got to do some tests. That's a whole lot of time for this patient to be in the same room as this one. So, unfortunately, because our healthcare workers weren't all that great, this patient now contracted C. diff because we didn't understand infection control. Is her immune system going to be able to fight that off? Probably not. That's right. It's already working. It's already stretched too thin. I mean, a surgical site infection might do her in, but not before the C. diff gets her. So we have to understand that our patients are the ones that need to be protected. I have a healthy immune system. So do you. Those gloves are not there to protect you. They're there to protect your patients from everything in this environment. Because if you remember what I said on Monday, we take the sickest people in our community and we put them all in one place. And the risk of them contracting something from someone else is great if we don't take the right steps. So the first thing we need to understand is that those gloves are there to protect more than just you. In fact, you are secondary. You can't rely on the gloves to be your only form of protection because gloves have holes. Now, if you remember me saying on Monday, pathogens need 3 things to thrive in an environment: warm, dark, moist. Anybody ever wear rubber gloves for any amount of time? What does it make your hands do? Sweat. So we have warm, right? That's what's making the sweat happen. We're holding in body heat. We have moist because of the sweat. We have dark because the gloves block out light. So on the surface of your hand is the ideal breeding environment for pathogens that get through the holes. Occasionally I go shopping at those big box stores down the street where they have everything cheap, right? And I go through the checkout, well, when they had checkout lines. Now I have to do it myself, apparently. But I'd go through the checkout lines and you'd see these little old lady cashiers with gloves that are scanning all the stuff, right? Because they don't want to touch your ketchup bottle. And then they get 4 hours go by, they get to go on break and they take their gloves off and they think to themselves, my hands are clean because I didn't touch your ketchup bottles. I had gloves on that whole time. And they sit down and eat their tuna salad sandwich with a side of E. coli. They didn't wash their hands because they assumed their hands were clean because they wore gloves, when in fact, their hands were probably way more contaminated than if they hadn't worn gloves to begin with. Like, we have these false conceptions regarding glove use that I have to somehow overcome. So we have to remember why we're wearing gloves to begin with. It's not to keep you safe. You're going to wash your hands before you touch that patient. You're going to wash your hands after you touch that patient. pathogens go down the sink, right? If you wear gloves, then you are actually promoting an environment on your hands for bacterial growth. So if you do choose to wear gloves, and there are times when we are going to wear gloves, I'm going to get into that in a minute, but if you do choose to wear gloves, what do you think you need to do after you take them off? Way more important than you think it is. Okay. And this is how things get spread around the environment, because people wear gloves, they take them off, and they think to themselves, I'm clean. And they're probably way less clean than they were if they hadn't worn gloves to begin with. Did you learn anything there? A little different way of looking at things, right? So if we are going to wear gloves, or if we are going to do a skill, we have to evaluate whether we need to wear gloves, because there are situations where we do want an extra layer of protection. And that's all it is. It's an extra layer. It doesn't remove hand washing before or hand washing after. We're just adding an extra layer. So to understand why we would want an extra layer, we're going to talk about the chain of infection. So sitting in front of you right there is a tray of HIV virus. Anybody know what HIV is? Well, you don't need to know that what HIV stands for. What does HIV cause? AIDS, right? It's the virus that causes AIDS. It's the human immunodeficiency virus. Well, it's right there in the name. What does immunodeficiency mean? Yeah, your immune system is broken, doesn't work, offline. Do you think that's a good thing to have in a house full of sick? Probably not. So we want to avoid the hospital at all costs, because our immune system, we're in pathogen paradise and our immune system isn't working. This is not a good thing, right? So you in front of you have an entire tray full of HIV, but that's not really a danger to you because it's sitting there minding its own business. They're not crawling over towards you, are they? No, it's covered. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not really a danger to you at all. It's just near you. Probably makes you a little skittish, but it's not really a danger because the pathogen has a place to live and it's happy in its home. And there's no way out because it's covered. Make sense? Okay. So if we have a pathogen that's safe in a home, it's not a danger to you. So if you have MRSA inside you, it's not a danger. If you have, hepatitis inside you, it's not a danger. If you have a urinary tract infection inside you, it's not a danger because you guys are holding on to those pathogens pretty well. Now, the one thing you need to understand about pathogens is they have no way of getting around on their own. Pathogens don't have legs. They don't have wings. They can't fly. They can't run. They can't jump. They can't hop. They can't do anything. A pathogen is pretty much stuck where it's at unless it has a way to move about. So there's only two ways that pathogens can move. They can either float or flow. That's it. They can float or they can flow. But that means that they, in order to flow, they have to have a way out of the body. Because remember, that pathogen is safe in that body, happy. It's got a nice warm home. So there's no way out unless it finds a door. Take the lid off of that for me. Okay, now that pathogen has a doorway out. A doorway out of somebody can be any body opening. Eyes, nose, mouth, genitals, rectal area, wounds, rashes, sores, or incisions. Okay. Any break in the skin is like uncovering the pathogen dish. Now the pathogens can escape. But remember, no legs, no wings. They have to float or flow. So if the pathogen is escaping through our respiratory system, we cough, we spit, we vomit, right? If it's going through our mouth, nose area, those pathogens, in order to spread, would need to float. Any other pathogen needs to flow. So it has to be in liquid, blood, urine, liquid feces. Saliva actually does not transmit pathogens effectively. Yeah, very, very, very few pathogens are able to be transmitted through saliva. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Yeah, mono can. That's probably a good example, but very, very few others. Yeah, they've actually found that HIV is not transmitted through saliva, either is hepatitis. So anything through the respiratory system has to float. Anything else has to flow. So it's got to be in liquid. Make sense? They can't fly. They can't walk. They can't jump. So even though that container is open, sitting on that desk, still not a danger to you. But you're looking a little more suspiciously at it because we know now that it has an opening, right? So what I want you to do is reach in there and grab one of those. Yep, go ahead, reach in and then hand it to her. There you go. So what just happened is we had a pathogen in a reservoir that had a doorway out, and through contact, you were able to spread it to her. Okay. But remember, there's only two ways that can happen: float. So there was liquid involved. So if we're going to touch anything liquid that comes out of it, we probably want another layer of protection. Gloves. Make sense? Okay. So if I'm going to touch any body fluids like blood, urine, feces, respiratory secretions, wound drainage, anything like that, I would want an extra layer of protection. Ask at the beginning of every single skill I do is, when I'm doing this skill, is it possible I might come into contact with body fluids? If the answer is yes, I need gloves. If the answer is maybe, I need gloves. If the answer is no, I'm good with hand washing. Don't need gloves. The second time we would need gloves is if we're going to touch any personal skin. So this would be the breast area on females, the genital area on both sexes. You just don't want to be in somebody's personal area with bare hands. It could definitely give them the wrong idea, for sure. But we want to make it more comfortable for them, make it a little more clinical. But also we have to remember that personal areas often get leaky. So we have that fluid again. Feet are not considered personal skin. So nothing normally covered, feet aren't normally covered by a bathing suit. Okay. Now feet is going to be something a little bit different. I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. Okay. So you're like 2 steps ahead. Okay. So at the beginning of every skill, I'm going to ask myself, during this skill, is it possible I may encounter personal skin, breast or genital area? If I'm going to touch that during this skill, then I probably need some gloves. If I'm not going anywhere near personal skin, no gloves required. So first question I'm asking, am I going to touch any body fluids? If the answer is yes, I need gloves, maybe I need gloves, no, move on. Second question is, am I going to touch any personal skin? If the answer is yes, I need gloves, maybe I need gloves, no, I'm going to move on. Third question is, am I going to touch any skin while doing this skill that is open? Any open areas like eyes, nose, mouth, genital area, rectal area, wounds, rashes, sores, or incisions. So now when we're doing foot care, the whole reason we're doing foot care is to see if there is a wound on the bottom of the foot. So that question when we're doing foot care is a maybe. Maybe. I haven't seen the bottom of the foot yet. I don't know if there's a wound there. So what did I tell you we need to do with maybes? Do we wear gloves? Still wear them. Make sense? Okay. So your 3 glove rules are, am I going to touch anything ooey gooey that's not mine? Am I going to touch personal skin? And am I going to touch any open skin? If the answer is yes, you need gloves. Yes to any one of those, you need gloves. If the answer is maybe to any one of those, you need gloves. If the answer is no to all of those, you don't need gloves. And infection control is going to be taken care of by washing your hands before you touch the patient and washing your hands after you touch the patient. Now, a word on hand sanitizers. We do use them. We use them a lot in clinical settings. And hand sanitizers are great, but there is a problem with hand sanitizers. And the problem is that most people do not use them properly. So this is my little hand sanitizer guy. Isn't he cute? We normally, when we're going to use hand sanitizer, get a little bit of hand sanitizer. We rub. And we're done. In order to be effective, you have to use enough hand sanitizer that your hands stay wet for at least 20 seconds. Where did we hear that before? Hand washing, same rule applies. So that means that if I'm going to use hand sanitizer, I need to get a lot of hand sanitizer. And I need to rub all surfaces. Notice before I just kind of rub the palms of my hands, I need to rub all surfaces for at least, well, if I'm going to do that, might as well wash my hands. People do this to save time. And when they save time, it's no longer effective. Good. Now, there's another problem with hand sanitizer that most people don't know. Hand sanitizer does not work on 2 very specific types of pathogens. The first is the norovirus. This is called the daycare disease or the cruise ship disease. It is a gastrointestinal illness, usually lasts 3 to 5 days. Can't get out of the bathroom, comes out both ends. It's absolutely horrible. Every little kid gets it. That's why they call it the daycare disease. It's pretty nasty stuff, and it's not killed by hand sanitizer. The other one that isn't affected by hand sanitizer is C. diff. So if we have a patient with norovirus or C. diff, hand sanitizer should not be used. Hand washing should. Good. So the other problem with hand sanitizer, and for me, this is just kind of a gross thing, right? When I wash my hands, where do the pathogens go? Yeah, I'm physically using friction to get them off of my hands, and the water is pushing them away. So when I'm done with hand washing, if I've done it correctly, my hands should be pretty pathogen free, right? When I use hand sanitizer, where do those pathogens go? They're still there. Now, they're dead E. coli. But for me, if I'm going to eat a thing of fries with a side of dead E. coli, that's not much more appetizing than a side of live E. coli, right? So if my hands are going to go up near my face for any reason, whether I'm eating or drinking or using a phone or anything like that, hand sanitizer is not going to be effective at reducing your opportunity for infection. Does that make sense? You really want to wash those pathogens away. So before you go on break, what should you do? Yeah. If before you eat, what should you do? Before you smoke, before you get on the phone, right? Or you scratch your nose. And we touch our faces all the time without even being aware of it. We touch our faces. So we have to be a little bit more aware of how pathogens are spread and the methods that we're going to use to control that spread. Does that make sense? Any questions? Did you learn anything? All right, I want to spend just a minute talking to you about your immune system. So this is kind of a hard thing to explain. So I'm really going to simplify this. I'm going to kind of put this in 5th grade terms, right? Our immune system is way more complex than what I'm about to make it out, but this will kind of get the idea across, okay? So let's say that we're sitting here in this classroom and a bad guy bursts through that door, okay? Now you're the first person he sees. So your job is to try to keep us safe because you're first in line, right? So you grab your water bottle and you bonk him over the head. Now it doesn't kill him, but he runs away because he's scared. He runs away and he goes and tells all the other bad guys out there, hey, if you go to this place and you go in the door, the first person you see is going to bonk you on the head with a water bottle. So the next bad guy that runs in, he knows you're sitting there with a water bottle. So what's he going to do? Yeah, he's prepared. He's going to duck. He's going to bob. He's going to weave. And they got rid of you. So now you're on deck and you are going to throw your phone at him and it bounces off his head, doesn't kill him. He runs outside. And what's he going to tell all the other bad guys? Yeah. So next bad guy that comes in, he's prepared, right? So the third bad guy that comes in, you get a little smarter. You grab that fire extinguisher and you try to push him out the door with a stream, which doesn't kill him. So he goes out and he tells all the other bad guys, right? Fire extinguisher. So they come in with umbrellas. They're going to protect themselves. So now we're with you. You think and you think and you think, and you know that water bottles don't work, phones don't work, fire extinguishers don't work. You got to come up with something a little bit better. So you grab those scissors and you are successful at killing the bad guy. Okay, good job. So what do all these other people need to know? Scissors work. Yeah, scissors work. So you would spread the word to all the people that are left. Scissors work. That's your immune system, guys. That's how your immune system works. Your immune system tries water bottles and phones and fire. It tries all the things that the defenses that it has in its arsenal until it comes across something that works, and then it spreads the word. Right, and that's why we get sick, because our body is taking that time to try to figure out what is going to kill the pathogen. Good? Makes sense? Now, the next time a bad guy comes in, she's going to go straight for the scissors because she got your memo. She knows what to do. She goes straight for the scissors, kills the bad guy. We don't get any symptoms. We're good. We're good, right? Because we now know what to do, what's effective. Now, 16 years from now, if a bad guy comes in, and she hasn't ever seen a bad guy since she got your scissor memo, right? And it's been 16 years. Do you think she's going to remember scissors? Probably not. Probably not. Because she's got a whole lot of other things that have come up since then. So it may take her a little bit longer to fight it, or she may have to start over with water bottles because she just doesn't remember, right? Does that make sense? Here's the scary thing. We are not the only ones with an immune system. Pathogens have one too. So that means that everything that we try to kill the pathogens, they remember. So both of us are equally matched. We remember what works and what doesn't, but so do they. So if we use things that aren't effective, like antibiotics that don't kill all of the bad guys, the ones that are left are able to spread the word on how that works. And this is how they develop immunity against our defenses. So when you go get antibiotics and you're told to take all of the antibiotics and you take them until you feel better and put the rest in the medicine cabinet for next time, you left survivors. Yeah. The whole reason you have to take them all is because just killing enough to get rid of the symptoms didn't kill them all. And now we have survivors that can spread the word. So when we tell you to take them for 7 days, we're trying to get every last pathogen so that there are no survivors. You're welcome. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. So let's talk about glove rules. We are going to use glove rules for every single skill we do. They won't all require gloves, but we always have to identify if we need gloves, because gloves are not based on the skill. Gloves are based on, the patient we're doing the skill on. So if we're going to be brushing somebody's teeth, our first question is, are we going to be touching body fluids when doing this skill? Yes. Please stop there. We need gloves. That's it. Stop there. We're good. But if we're going to be doing exercises on a patient's right arm and they have no incisions, right? Our first question is, am I going to be touching body fluids doing this? Exercising the right arm, probably not touching body fluids, right? Second question is, am I going to be touching personal skin? Exercising the right arm, no personal skin there, unless we're in the Victorian era, right? And the third question is, am I going to be touching any wet body opening? No incisions, no rashes, no wounds, no nothing, just exercises the right arm. So do I need gloves to exercise this patient's right arm? Now, same skill, right? Exercises on the right arm, but the patient has an incision going all the way down their arm. Now, do I need gloves?
Yeah.
It's not based on the skill. It's based on the patient. So it doesn't matter what the skill is. We always have to identify whether we need gloves. Good? Okay, makes sense? Okay, so 3 questions we're going to ask ourselves. Am I going to touch anything ooey gooey doing this skill, personal skin, or non-intact skin? If my answer is yes to any one of those, I need gloves. If the answer is I don't know or maybe, I need gloves. If the answer is no to all 3 of those, I'm good, don't need gloves, but do I need to wash my hands before and after? If I wear gloves, do I need to wash my hands? It's probably more important that you wash your hands after removing gloves. Good? Questions? Second one is probably more important. The first thing your gloves should touch is the patient. Patient. Because if you remember, we talked about the chain of infection, right? So if I go in and I put gloves on and I touch a whole bunch of stuff in the environment and then touch the patient with those gloves, remember their immune system is already working. I'm introducing a new pathogen to their system. So the first thing your gloves should touch is the patient. So this goes right back to our sandwich making, right? We have to be aware of what those gloves are touching. If that sandwich maker thought about, okay, I'm picking up the mayonnaise spreader, which has been sitting in the mayonnaise for like 16 days now, and that's on my gloves. If they had thought about that, they might have stopped and changed those gloves, right? So we have to think about that. What are those gloves touching? The problem with healthcare workers and gloves is we tend to focus on us. Who is it all about? It's never about us, ever. Are you starting to see how I'm trying to reshape your minds for this? Good. So you're going to hear me say this a lot. The first thing your gloves should touch is the patient. And then once you've done your skill, you have to pay attention to what is your dirty gloves touch then. because we don't want to cross-contaminate the environment. So we want to try to minimize cross-contamination. And then we're going to learn how to remove those soiled gloves correctly. Okay, good. Questions? Questions? I know it's a long, long explanation, but this is a super important one. So there's actually a couple of things wrong with gloves that I haven't really talked about. We talked about the fact that gloves are not the magic suit of armor you think they are. But there's two other problems with gloves. One of them is an environmental problem. Now, guys, I am not an environmentalist, not by any stretch of the imagination. I drive a race car and love it, right? Gas guzzler. I don't recycle. I am not an environmentalist, but this did impact me, okay? When you wear gloves, have you ever stopped to think about what happens to those gloves after you wear them? Yeah, trash, right? We throw them away. Throw them away. Yeah. Now, latex gloves are biodegradable. They will break down in the environment eventually. Takes hundreds of years, long time. But they are a natural product. So over time, they will eventually break down. But that's not what we use in most clinical settings. Now we use nitrile gloves or vinyl gloves because they're more hypoallergenic. A lot of people develop latex allergies. So those vinyl and nitrile gloves are not biodegradable ever. That means that the pair of gloves that you put on today is going to be on this planet 100,000 years from now. Now, we used to burn everything. Yeah, we used to. We used to burn everything until we realized that, and my very first office was right next to the hospital incinerator, which was great because I was always cold. I mean, it was awesome, right? But what we realized over time is that all of the fumes from burning plastic went up into our atmosphere, and it actually ate a hole in our ozone layer, which we kind of need to like live. So we stopped doing that. So then we just kind of stockpiled all this medical waste, just kind of put it in landfills, didn't really think about it. Somewhere along the line, somebody says, you know, that's not a good idea, right? We're going to run out of room. So they started brainstorming, and somebody said, you know what? There's this big ocean out there. Nobody's using it. It's super deep. So we're just going to put all of our medical waste in these big round metal barrels, poke some holes in the top, take them out there, put them in the water. They fill up with water. They sink to the bottom. Out of sight, out of mind. Perfect solution. We did that for years. Took our medical waste out, drowned it in the ocean. But now some of the fish that we're pulling from the Northern Pacific have high levels of latex. So we poisoned our own food supply. Probably not a good idea. So now we're back to landfills, stockpiling them. Now, this isn't going to be my problem. I'm out of here in like 30 years, right? Not going to be my problem. This is going to be my granddaughter's problem, because you can't continue to use gloves at the rate that we're using them with no clear idea of what to do with them after they've been used. So to give you an example, in America, and I'm just going to talk the US, right? In America, and I'm only going to talk medical. We're not talking about housekeeping or dental or food service or industrial, not just healthcare. We use enough gloves to fill a football stadium 35 feet deep every day. Think about how many gloves one healthcare worker uses on a general shift. So like I said, not going to be my problem. I'm out of here. This will be my granddaughter's problem. Her generation is going to have to solve this. So we have to be a little bit smarter about the use of patient use items. Okay, makes sense? Okay, so wear them when you need them. We need an extra layer of protection if we're dealing with pathogens. But be smart about it if we don't need it. If you're just wearing gloves routinely for no reason other than you don't want to think about infection control, you're putting your patient at risk and you're putting the environment at risk. Now, there's a cost factor in that as well. Gloves are not cheap. So when you're using gloves all the time, your employer has to provide those gloves. And if they're spending a fortune on gloves, where's your raise money going to come from? So we have to be smart about the use of supplies. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay. All right, so I'm going to teach you how to remove your gloves and then we'll take a quick break. I know I'm running a little bit late on break today. Anybody allergic to latex? Do I have any latex allergies in here? Good. These are small. Some of you may have to stretch to put them on, but the latex gloves are a little bit easier to play with. Oh, I got to go back. Got something. Okay. Let me go back one slide. There is something I forgot to mention. All right. So when we were talking about the little HIV guys there, that's our pathogen. And no pathogen, no problem, right? This whole cycle has to start with a pathogen. No pathogen, no problem. But that pathogen has to have a nice place to live. Now, most pathogens require warm, dark, moist. Like the human body is ideal. Warm, dark, moist. But they don't live well out on surfaces. They just don't. Because surfaces are not warm, they're not dark, and they're not moist because things dry out. So pathogens really do need a place to live. And as long as it's inside that place, it's going to be perfectly happy and, you know, life will go on for the pathogen. But eventually it's going to get a little crowded because pathogens don't need boy pathogens and girl pathogens to make baby pathogens. It doesn't work like that. They just need the right environment and the right enzymes, and they zip themselves in half, and now there's two. Two become four. Four become eight. Eight becomes 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, and so on. So you can see how this can really quickly get crowded, right? So when the pathogens get a little crowded in their home, they start to look for a way out. This could be coughing, sneezing for respiratory pathogens. It could be bleeding or wound drainage or urine or some other liquid for other pathogens, but it has to have a way out. Pathogen inside a body isn't a risk to you unless it has a way out. Then it's got to be able to travel, because remember, they don't fly, they don't walk, they don't jump. They have to float or flow. But even then, it's not much of a danger to you unless you have a doorway in. So pathogen on your skin, they don't drill, they don't burrow, they don't get inside you unless it has a doorway inside. So what would be a doorway that a pathogen could get inside your body? Mouth, eyes, nose, genitals. Yeah, open wound. So basically all of these guys on the patient qualify over here on us, right? So eyes, nose, mouth, genitals, rectal area, wounds, rashes, sores, and incisions. So if you have a wound, you probably should keep it covered. If you have a rash, you probably should keep it covered, right? Good. You have an incision, you probably should not be working until it's healed over, closed off, because that's how pathogens get in. But even if pathogens get in you, it doesn't necessarily mean game over, because you have to be susceptible. If your immune system has seen this pathogen before and knows how to kill it and pass the word, even a pathogen that gets in you isn't going to be able to make you sick if your immune system can kill it off. This is where vaccinations become important, because a vaccination is nothing more than an all points bulletin. We know, we've already been through the water bottles and the phone and the fire extinguisher. We know scissors work. So we sent out, without your body having to do all that itself, we already know it. So we send instructions to your body. Hey, if you happen to see this guy, right, this is how you kill it. That's all a vaccination is. It gives instructions to your immune system on how to shortcut this whole process so the pathogen doesn't make you sick. That's it. People think vaccinations are scary. Guys, it makes it an open book test. I don't know about you, but I like all the open book tests I can get, especially when my life is on the line, right? Because if I fail this test, I could die. If it's a life and death test, I want open book. I want all the help I can get. Make sense? Good. So that is the chain of infection. You need to have a basic understanding of how this works. They're not going to ask you specifics on it, but you kind of need to understand a little bit about infection control. Good? Good. All right, so let's learn how to remove our soiled gloves correctly. So if we have gloves and we're getting ready to do a skill and we've done our opening, knock, knock, knock. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. I'm here to brush your teeth or whatever the skill is. Is that okay? Close curtain, wash hands. I'm ready to get my supplies. Now, do you think that I want to put my gloves on before I get my supplies? No, because the first thing my gloves should touch is the patient. So I got to wait. I got to get all of my supplies first. Once I'm ready to start the skill, I've done all of my prep work. Everything is ready. I'm ready to touch the patient. Then I can put my gloves on. Then I'm going to do the skill, whatever the skill is. And once I'm done with the skill, before I touch everything else in the environment, I got to take my gloves off. But I've got to do it in a way that doesn't cross-contaminate. So this process is actually really important. Dirty glove can touch dirty glove. Not a problem. Dirty glove cannot touch skin. So you can't go underneath. We're going to pinch up here at the palm of your hand, pinch up and pull this inside out. And you want to wind it up in that hand. That way the glove isn't flapping around everywhere, right? Now, skin can touch skin, but skin cannot touch dirty gloves. So we're going to go underneath this one. Don't do this. A lot of people will do this. Put their thumb here. Don't do that because your skin is touching the glove. You have to go underneath with 2 fingers and pull that off. So one dirty glove is inside the other dirty glove. And then you would just throw this away. But you can take them home and clean your toilet if you want. Yes, nitriles are way thicker. And that's why I demonstrate this with latex, because people struggle to get those nitrile ones off. Yeah. They're actually pretty durable. They really are. This is what we use for years and years and years and years. They're actually pretty durable. Yeah, I mean, you can rip them. And this is probably one of the reasons you don't want the sharp, pointy nails, right? You don't want a lot of sharp jewelry on. But they're pretty durable. So I'm going to date myself here. Back when I started in healthcare, you know, dinosaurs were still roaming. Back when I started healthcare, this was in the 80s, we didn't have gloves for everything. There were no gloves. Gloves stayed in the surgery area. That's who wore gloves, were the surgeons. You'd have a few boxes of gloves on the nurse's station for invasive procedures. But for patient care, there were no gloves. You washed your hands before and you washed your hands after. And that was effective. It wasn't until the AIDS epidemic, when we really weren't sure how something spread, that gloves became a thing. We started protecting everybody against everything by wearing gloves all the time. And then we realized, wait a minute, wearing gloves all the time really wasn't the right answer. We got to get more selective. And that's when this system came up. Okay. So wear them when you need them. Don't wear them all the time for no reason. Wear them when you need them, but make sure you understand why you're wearing them and try to prevent cross contamination. Okay. Does that make sense? Any questions on this? Okay. Did I change your mind a little bit? All right, let's go ahead and take our break. So that is glove rules. Okay. That's a good time for a break.
I know. Yeah. Very fast. Are you going to be in here? Or are you heading out? I actually need to step out for just a second. I just want to ask, check my email. Do you come here? Yeah, I wanted to go over the website. Then we can. Okay, if you can grab me after class, that is, I have several of you here working with me. I got you. Okay. You know, it's just, okay. Yes, you can eat one drink and they're just going to help. Thank you. You're welcome. If you're a little late coming back from class, let me get or break. Yeah, I'm just gonna go to Taco Bell and I'll eat it here and the class starts. That's fine. No, I'm hungry.
Is there someone in there already? The bathroom? Oh, okay.
You can go next door to the retail store. It's in the back. Thank you.
You want it back or front? I was pulling myself. I was finished with my teenagers. How are you? At home, but if I come in here, I'll say what you have to do. If you ever say it, I'll say it. Trying to do that sometimes. Yeah, when we go. She's like, we'll go through that way. Yeah. And my kids are always there. Better myself. I'm on my own now. He joined the meeting. Oh, that's good. It's just me. Have my friend, but. Very useful, so that's good. Well, I like talking to people. I do it now, but I just want to get. What do you do about school? I do like that. Oh, really? From home? I do 3 days, 12 hour shifts. Very good. I work the weekend. No, it's good. I work with one guy so far. And I've been doing it for 12 years. I just want to get more further. But yeah, I'd like to just go and get more steady hours to my feet. I need more money too. That's good. It was just hard. It was with my kids. And somehow, not all by myself. I was more confident. I get it. Yeah. I was a young mama, so I get it. I am separated. And then looked on. I guess it's stepping stone. Yeah, it's good. It's always good to improve yourself. You know? Yeah, I picked it on purpose so I could see. Cause they were my glasses for distance, so sometimes I'm like, oh. Yeah, I have to wear mine just for reading, but when you start from the break, it's like my phone goes, I need new glasses. I said, yeah, I know, I gotta go get that done. No, mine are just for distance, so when she puts stuff up, I'm like, hold up, I can't see. Gotta get my work done. I love those pieces broken. How much was it? 19-year-old and one with 16-year-old. Or hanging girl. friend got married when I was 19. I had them when I was 21. And I got myself. Oh, good, because I had one in college and one who was just sophomore in high school. But I work with handicapped kids at Springfield High School. Yeah. So, I think the CNA will probably look at them. That was smart.
I'm at work, but I work night shift 11 to 7, and they're open 2 o'clock in the morning. It takes like 10 minutes. Of course, those. No, I've been in this. Yes, transporter. Yes. Like it'll mess your back up. Right? Now it's changed. Yeah, dude, I was a phlebotomist. I hate being a phlebotomist. Well, we found out if everybody was already like. Oh, already. Yeah, I mean, the meds. Yeah, yeah, I don't want to.
I'm trying to get more certifications. I work in the ER, so I'm like, I'm probably not seeing work and everything. Yeah.
Hospitals have med techs?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, I wish.
I was like, hey, and I'm over here working in the.
No, I'm in the ER, but.
I worked at. Isn't there a Rivera Health in Spring Hill? Yeah. I live next to the one in Spring Hill.
Yeah, there's Brooksville, Spring Hill, Seven Rivers, and.
That's where I live, yeah. Up and out. All right, so this is a new flyer I just handed you guys.
This kind of shows.
This shows a lot of the resources that we have available. So I go over a lot, but you're probably not like taking it all in. So remember the ebook we talked about on Monday, the free ebook for the written test. This shows, it tells you where to get that. This is the game show, which I'm actually doing on Tuesday, the first and third Tuesday of every month. It's live on YouTube. And it's 15 practice test questions in a game show format. I actually give prizes because the program that I use reads your responses and awards points. So it works just like a game show. So you may want to tune in for that. There's also replays where you can watch the replays to get sample questions for the state exam. And we have a card game that's a really fun way of learning the principles. I go live on YouTube every Thursday at 3. I give a lesson and answer questions. The live stream, of course, you know about because you're here. The workplace quiz on our website will help you identify the best place for you to work as a CNA based on your personality traits. And then we have some new activities as well, the flashcards, this activity set. So this kind of gives you a brief overview of all of the different resources we have beyond the classroom. Okay. All right.
So any questions so far? Any questions? All right, we're going to talk about base and cleaning. think I have the page on. I don't. Okay. Back here. Decent training. Okay, this is in your book. Hold on, let me find the page for you. I forgot to put the page on here. Page 81. And we're just going to do a very brief, very brief overview of this. We're going to get into basin cleaning a little bit more in a later lesson. But the big thing that I want you to understand, because I'm about to show you mouth care in just a minute, and part of mouth care, you're going to see me clean the basin. It always brings up some questions. So first of all, we're not trying to go for sterile. Not going for sterile. Just clean. So when you brush your teeth over your sink at home, do you sterilize the sink after you use it? No, you probably just rinse it out and get the big globs of toothpaste out. Are you the only one that uses that sink ever? No. So it's used by other people and you're just kind of getting it clean enough for other people to use. Make sense? All right. When we're working in healthcare, the basins that we use are not used by other people. They're only used by that one patient. But we're going to treat it the same way we treat our sinks at home. We're just going to rinse it out. We're not trying to get it sterile. We're not getting it clean enough for somebody else to use. This is just that patient's basin. But we don't want to put things back that are really dirty. Does that make sense? So we're just going to rinse it out. Now, some places and some patients may require that your basins get disinfected as an extra layer of protection. So remember we talked about HIV, which kind of depletes the immune system, right? With those patients, we would really want to make sure that the basins got super, super clean so that the patient, when they use the basin, can't contract anything. We might do this with chemotherapy patients as well, patients that are getting chemotherapy. So there are certain situations where we may have to disinfect basins before we put them away, but that's not what we're doing for the test. Okay, for the test, we're rinsing, drying, and storing. But I had to create one system, one way of doing things that's good just for rinsing, drying, and storing for regular, and also meets the needs if we have to disinfect. So one system works for both. Make sense? So what we're going to do is take our basin over to the bathroom and we're going to dump it where it normally goes. So if it's holding saliva from mouth care, where do you normally brush your teeth? So we're going to dump it in the sink. If it's urine, where do you usually put urine? Toilet. So it would go in the toilet. You're going to put it where it normally goes. You're going to rinse the item, the basin, and then you're going to dump that out and set it down in the sink. Because if we're going to disinfect it, we can't be holding it while we're disinfecting. Okay. So we dump it, we rinse it, we set it down. And if you needed to disinfect, you would spray it. We're not going to disinfect for the test, but if you needed to disinfect, the process allows you to do so. Okay. But now that the basin's been sprayed, you can't pick it up with your hand, either your bare hand or your gloves, because the basin is clean and you are not. So you would need a paper towel to pick up the basin, a paper towel to dry the inside, a different paper towel to dry the outside, because we don't disinfect the outside, and then one more to open the drawer and put your item away. So the system is exactly the same. Dump it, rinse it, set it down. Always the same. Spraying is the only part that we would add in if we needed to. Paper towel to pick it up, paper towel to dry the inside, paper towel to dry the outside, paper towel for the drawer. You're going to see this over and over because we have, I think, 7 washing skills. They all require basin cleaning. So you're going to see this process quite a bit, but I've got it all detailed right here for you to make it easy to remember the process. Okay. Good. All right. So this is, we talked about this way earlier, like at the very beginning of class today, eons ago, right? Our checkpoints are patient must be sitting fully upright. We're going to protect the clothing. We're going to wet the toothbrush before we put the toothpaste on it. We'll brush all surfaces of the teeth and tongue. We're going to allow the patient to rinse and spit, and we're going to leave the resident's face and clothing dry. These are our checkpoints for mouth care. But we also have to follow the care plan, right? We're going to do our opening. Every skill starts with the opening. Every opening starts with a knock. We're going to evaluate if we need gloves. Spoiler alert, you do. We're going to use a barrier on the table to hold our supplies. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next skill. So just watch what I do here. Linen rules we'll get to a little bit later. We're going to clean our basin and we're going to do the closing. Remember, the closing is always done at the end of every skill. So good? Questions? I'm going to show you this video because it has really good close-ups. Please remember that we don't brush somebody's teeth if we don't have to brush their teeth. If they can do it themselves, then they will brush their own teeth. Okay, so if you look at the bottom, of mouth care on page, where is it, 66. I do want to point this out. If you look at the bottom of page 66, and you look at the little clock there, how long do they give you to do this skill? 12 minutes. Have you ever taken 12 minutes to brush your teeth? Okay, this is way, way, way more time. Do not brush. You don't have to brush your teeth for any specific amount of time. You don't have to do like a 2-minute brush or anything like that. We're not flossing. It's just brushing your teeth, right? They give you 12 minutes. If you look here, how long does my video take? 5 minutes. Now, you'll notice at the very beginning, I've got this whole intro thing going on, right? Where I give you the care plan and the supplies and all that. And at the end, I've got a whole credits thing going on. So it's really not 5 minutes. It's actually a little less than that. They give you way more time than you need. I need you to understand that so you don't rush. When you rush, you miss steps, you make mistakes. You got the plenty of time.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Patti. I'm your CNA today. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful. I need to do mouth care. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put the head of your bed up. And then I'll close the curtain, wash my hands, and gather my supplies.
Okay.
We'll get you to a full upright sitting position for safety. And if I can get you to lean forward, please. There you go. Is that more comfortable?
Yes. Much.
Okay, I'm going to close your curtain and wash my hands now. I'll gather my supplies. I'm going to start with the barrier, and we'll place that on your overbed table. I'm going to get a towel, a set of gloves, a basin, toothbrush and toothpaste, and a cup of water. We'll prepare the toothbrush first. We'll get it wet, place a little bit of toothpaste on it, and set it in the basin. Jones, can I place this towel over your chest?
Yes, please.
And now I'll apply my gloves. Okay, Mr. Jones, can you open wide for me? I'm gonna brush the back on the bottom. The back on the top. And can you bring your teeth together? And stick your tongue out for me. Thank you. Let that aside. Go ahead and take a sip. Rinse your mouth. Let me wipe that off for you. Another sip.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm going to dispose of my cup, wrapper, and toothbrush. I'll be right back. I'm going to remove the towel and place it into dirty linen. Going to go clean the basin, and I'll be right back. I'll place the toothpaste in the basin, use the paper towel to open the drawer, and place the basin and toothpaste in the drawer. I'll clean up my work environment and go throw these items away. Now I remove my gloves. Okay, Mr. Jones, is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here? A magazine?
No, thank you.
Okay, your call light is right here.
No, this is great.
Okay, I'm going to open the curtain and go wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about my skill, make any corrections I need to make, and then tell the evaluator my skill is done. So at the top of the screen, you can see all of the principles as they're performed, the things that come down. That tells you when the opening is being done, or we're evaluating gloves, those things. Good. Questions? Okay. So one of the questions that comes up about this point in the program is, because I spent all day Monday talking, and I'm talking all day today, right up to the buzzer. You're probably wondering, when am I going to get to practice? You're watching these skills, I'm talking about them, but when do I actually get to do some hands-on practice? And the answer to that is on week 3. So because I'm still laying a foundation with you, and you don't really have much that you can practice yet, starting on week 3, we're starting to put all the pieces together, and you'll have practice time built into each class. So in week 3, you'll have between a half hour and an hour. Week 4, you'll have between an hour and 2 hours each class to be able to practice. Remember, you also have this room available to you until 4 o'clock while you're enrolled, and from 1:30 until 4 after you graduate. So lots of practice time available. Okay, good. Questions? All right, moving on. We're going over a lot of information here. Okay, so let's go to page 71. How do we know what to do with each patient? Care plan. So our care plan up here at the top of the page tells us to dress the resident in a long sleeve, button front, or snap front shirt. Let's stop there. Time out. You guys just came in from break. What's the temperature? If you read this care plan, long sleeves, you probably think to yourself, that's going to be uncomfortable for the patient. I am not putting this patient in long sleeves. It's 98 degrees outside. But what we have to understand is if the care plan specifies long sleeves, that means that we have to follow the care plan. Doesn't matter what we think about it. If the care plan says long sleeves, there's a reason that the nurse wants long sleeves. And there's a couple of reasons that I want to bring to your attention. They have nothing to do with temperature. If the patient is on certain medications, some medications make you photosensitive, which means that you react to the ultraviolet sunlight. Now, I'm going to tell you a very personal story here. When I was a teenager, 18, I had an infection and was put on antibiotics, and I went and picked them up from the pharmacy. And being 18 years old, I didn't realize those little stickers that they put on the bottle actually mean something. Who knew, right? Who knew? But the bottle said, avoid direct sunlight. Okay, who cares, right? I had a trip to Daytona Beach plant at 18. And I'm taking my antibiotics to get rid of my infection. Life is fine. And I go to Daytona with my best friend. And this is back when I could wear a bikini. So I'm laying out in the sun in my bikini with a medication that says avoid direct sunlight. What's the worst that could happen? We leave the beach and go back to the hotel, and I step out of the shower, and my best friend screams and says, "What is wrong with you? You are purple." Now I burn, but it wasn't a burn. I was literally purple. When that medication said avoid direct sunlight, the reason is because the ultraviolet rays could actually make the capillaries open. So my entire body looked like one giant bruise because it burst all the capillaries under my skin. Well, now I have trouble being in direct sunlight for too long. This is years later. Because of an adverse reaction to something I did when I was 18. Who knew that those stickers meant something, right? So if we have a patient that is on a medication, that medication may have something that says avoid direct sunlight. And we have to understand that long sleeves may be used for protecting the patient, not just temperature. They might also be used if your patient has a rash, like shingles, so that we don't spread the secretions to other patients. So there's a lot of reasons that that care plan may say long sleeves. It has absolutely nothing to do with temperature. Good?
You remember the name of that?
Yeah, Bactrim DS. Yes, I do. It is a lot of antibiotics, yeah. Bactrim DS is not really used much anymore. It's an old sulfa medication. So this says dress the resident in a long sleeve. So we know now long sleeves mean something. Button front or snap front shirt. Let's stop there. So all of you guys have a shirt on that you pulled over your head this morning. And that's kind of the default that we use in our society. Most of our shirts are pullover shirts. But sometimes if we have somebody with a weak arm or limited mobility, pullover shirts don't work real well because they require that your arm extends to get into the sleeve. So when we have somebody who has limited mobility on one side, we ask the patient or the families, go get us some shirts that button or snap up the front, because it's easier to dress side to side than top to bottom when we have limited mobility. And that's what's happening here. Our title says dress the resident with a weak arm. So we know we have some limited mobility, which is why our care plan specifically says button front or snap front shirt. Now, I told you on the state exam, right, that everything has to be uniform. This is the one kind of exception to that, because on your supply shelf will be a pullover shirt and a button or snap front shirt. Why do you think that they on the supply shelf? Right. They're grading your following the care plan. You guys see that? It's not that they're trying to trick you. It's that age, do you understand the importance of the care plan? So which shirt do you think you need to grab? The button or snap front? Yeah. Then it goes on to say pants and socks. They don't care about that. You're going to put pants and socks on. There's nothing to talk about there. Pants and socks. But there's no undergarments mentioned. Remember, we follow the care plan, the whole care plan, and so we're not adding undergarments here. It doesn't tell us to. We're not adding them. Either the patient already has them on and we don't have to worry about them, or we're not putting them on. Doesn't really matter. We don't care. That's not part of the test. Okay? Not part of the test. So shirt, pants, socks. That's all we're doing. Shirt, pants, socks. It says resident is lying in bed and has a weak right arm. That's important. You need to know which arm is weak, because that's going to dictate how we do this skill. There's a certain order that we have to take garments off and put them on when our patient has a weak arm. We're going to get to that in just a minute. It says the resident is not able to help with dressing, and after dressing, leave the resident in bed. At the bottom of the skill, you can see that this is a mannequin skill. So we're going to be doing this on a mannequin, just like this guy over here. They give you 14 minutes. It does not take me 14 minutes to get dressed. Maybe if I try on 16 outfits, because I don't know what I want to wear. But this is, they give you way more time than you actually need. But I will tell you, this does take a little bit longer than you would think, because mannequins don't really move the way a human moves. So you kind of have to struggle a little bit more with a mannequin. Okay. So it is going to take you a little bit more time, but definitely not 14 minutes. You don't need 14 minutes. But in order to learn how to do this skill, we have to talk about dressing. So this is on page 69 of your book. The big thing you have to remember here is that details count. Details count. So you want to make sure that the clothing is neat and adjusted properly, that the snaps or the buttons are in the right holes. It's not all cattywampus, that everything is laying properly, that the pants aren't like down underneath the hips. You want to make sure they're sitting at the natural waist, that the socks, the toe seams are actually over the toes and not sideways or on the top of the foot or bottom of the foot. Basically, you want the patient to look good. You're going to be judged on the appearance of the patient. Not just for the test, you're going to be judged on your patient's appearance in a clinical setting too. If I walk into a nursing home and I see a whole row of people sitting in wheelchairs in the hallway and their hair is all mussed up, nobody's wearing anything that matches, everything's kind of, not snapped properly or buttoned properly, am I going to think that there's good, conscientious CNAs working here? No. You are judged and your facility is judged by how your patients look. So it's going to be judged on the test as well. So details count here. But there's something else when we are talking about details. Sometimes your patients don't describe an outfit that matches, right? So we have the right to choose our own clothing, even in a clinical setting, because my clothing is usually an outward expression of what I feel that day. If I feel bright and cheerful, I might be wearing something bright and cheerful. If I feel kind of blah, we all have those days, it may be a t-shirt and sweatpants, right? We all have those days where we use our appearance to kind of give other people a glimpse into our feelings. Does that make sense? So in a clinical setting, that's still true. So we're going to ask our patient, what do you want to wear today? And they're going to describe an outfit, and we're going to go get the outfit they described. Now, this is a mannequin for this skill. You're still going to talk to her, just like she's a real person. So I'm going to ask her, what do you want to wear today? And she's going to answer. The evaluator will play the voice of the patient. You will get an answer. Oh, I want my red pants and my big mouth shirt. Okay, I'll get that for you. But for the test, whatever they choose is going to match. It's going to be fine. But in a clinical setting, remember, you're judged on the way your patient looks. So if they say, yeah, I want my purple plaid pants and my yellow flowered shirt, and you're like, ooh, that just doesn't work. That doesn't go together. You can suggest an alternative. You may say, you know, your white shirt would go really nice with those pants. Do you want to try that? Most likely, they'll probably say, oh, yeah, that's what I meant, because they want to look nice. But they may say, no, I want my yellow flowered shirt. Okay, no problem. We're going to suggest an alternative, but we will honor their wishes. We don't know. Maybe their son and daughter is coming to see them today, and the son bought the pants and the daughter bought the shirt, and they're trying to honor both of them. We don't know what their mindset is. Maybe Bingo is it too, and that's her lucky shirt. We don't know what their thought process is. We can suggest alternatives, but honor their wishes. We need to understand, though, that not everybody has the ability to put an outfit together. That's just not a skill that everybody has. And you'll see this a lot with older men. If you open up a closet, you'll see the same pair of pants 10 times over. It's either khaki or black, usually. And then you'll see 10 polo shirts in different colors, all exactly the same, because everything in there mixes and matches. So some people get around the inability to match an outfit by having a very prescribed wardrobe that mixes and matches. Okay, but you are allowed to suggest alternatives. Okay. Also going to remember USA first, and that means we're going to undress the strong arm first. And again, this is on page 69 for you. In the second column there, USA first. So if you remember going back to our care plan, it told us that our patient had a weak right arm, right? A weak right arm. So that means this patient laying there, this is her right arm. You have to learn the right and left of your patients, and it's opposite of you.
That's so hard for me.
Yes, it is opposite of you. So this is the patient's right arm. Since that's the weak arm, we're going to undress strong arm first. So we're going to undress the left arm first, and then we would dress the right arm first. Now, the reason for this is that if I've got a jacket on, I meant to bring my jacket today and forgot. If I've got a jacket on and you're going to take it off of me and I've got a weak right arm, right? I don't want that weak right arm to have to do a lot of work. I want the stronger arm to do all the work. So if I'm going to take that jacket off, I want to take my stronger arm out of the sleeve first and make it do all the work. And then the jacket just slides right off that weak arm. No motion required. Now, when I'm going to get dressed, I want to dress the weak arm first. So the jacket just slides right on that arm without a lot of motion required. I'm going to make that stronger arm do all the work to finish dressing. So USA first, undress strong arm first, dress weak arm first. Okay, good. Okay, so now we're going to get to barrier. You saw this. You saw me use a barrier with mouth care. We're going to get into the barrier a little bit more now. But barriers provide a clean place to put your clean supplies. So I have a video on this. It's now in the chat. You can watch the video. So, thank you, Dinah. Okay, so we need a clean place to put our clean supplies because those overbed tables are not considered clean, right? We use them for meals. That's what their main purpose is. It's kind of like a dining room table. It's used for meals, but ultimately everything else gets put on that table as well. Chapsticks, cell phones, crossword puzzle books, even urinals will get set on the overbed table because your patient doesn't have anywhere else to put them. So we can't consider this overbed table clean. That means I've got to make it clean to be able to put stuff I need on it. So the best way to do that is to use a barrier, something between this table surface and my clean supplies. So for the test, we're going to use a very specific kind of barrier. Yep. Yeah, I've got a bad knee. And every once in a while it yells at me. Okay. So for the test, we're going to use a very specific kind of barrier. This. There we go. And that's this. This is called a Chucks. Its real name is a disposable underpad. But that's a lot of syllables. So we don't usually call them disposable underpads. We call them Chucks because they're the kind of underpads you chuck it after you use it. Okay, that's the disposable part. So we call them Chucks. When you're using a Chucks for a barrier, you want the absorbent side facing upward. So this side, the white side here that's absorbent, it would go on the table like this with the waterproof side down and the absorbent side facing up. So this is the first thing that we're going to get before we go get our supplies. The first thing that we get is the barrier. I'm going to explain why in just a minute, but let me explain to you what the other type of underpad is. So that's a disposable underpad. We chuck it when we're done. This is a washable underpad. We call these bed pads and those Chucks. So they have nicknames, but they're both types of underpads. This is a washable, that's a disposable. Okay, good. So we want to get the Chucks first before, put her down a minute, before we get our supplies. And that's because we have a rule. Supplies cannot touch your uniform. Your uniform has leaned against the bed. It's pressed up against the sink. It's rubbed up against the privacy curtain. It's knelt on the floor for foot care. Your uniform is not clean. So if you go get a whole bunch of supplies and you get the Chucks at the same time, you're going to end up holding those supplies right up against your uniform as you're trying to spread the Chucks out. What is that going to do to the supplies? Contaminate them. So when we need a barrier, if we're going to use supplies and we need a barrier, it's the first thing we're going to do after we wash our hands is go get the barrier, put it on the table, and then go get your supplies and put those on the barrier. Good. So that's what you see here. We've done our opening, closed our curtain, washed our hands. We're going to go get the barrier and put it on the table first, and then we'll go get our supplies and put those on the barrier. The order matters because there is a checkpoint that makes sure you don't cross-contaminate the supplies by holding them up against your uniform. Okay, good. All right, when we are doing any skill that requires our patient to be uncovered or undressed, we want to minimize exposure. Now, when we minimize exposure, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to move the camera. Can you move it so it's facing me over here real quick? Thank you. I don't know why my thing is not paired up here. Good, thank you. Okay, so So if I'm going to do this skill, and I know because I'm dressing the patient, I obviously have to undress them, right? So if I know my patient is going to be undressed, we have to think about privacy. We have to think about patient rights. So how many of you guys are comfortable right now if I ask you to come here into this bed and I'm going to completely undress you so everybody can see? Anybody okay with that? I mean, it's in the name of science. Probably not, right? Because it's uncomfortable. We don't want to be exposed. Your patient doesn't want to be exposed either, even if it's something that has to be done. So we have to think about the emotional impact of this on your patient. You are a stranger. You're a stranger. So not only are we uncomfortable with having other people see us without clothes, we're really uncomfortable when those other people are strangers. Does that make sense? So we know that during our opening, knock, 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 hi, Miss Jones, my name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. I'm here to get you dressed. Is that okay? I'm going to close your curtains. What do I do after I close curtain? Wash my hands, right? So this helps with privacy, sure. This blocks all the people out there from seeing this patient. Does this thing block me from seeing the patient? And remember, to the patient, I'm a stranger. So this is important, but not the whole story, right? We have to have a way of protecting the patient from us. And that's what a privacy blanket does. So that's this guy. This, just like the Chucks, has a nickname. Yeah, in medicine, one name isn't enough. Everything has 2 or 3. So this is called a bath blanket or a privacy blanket. Either way, same thing, 2 different names. So this is going to be spread out over the patient. Now, let me kind of bring you into the patient's world for just a minute. What's the temperature like in this room right now? Yeah, you guys are all like bundled up, right? I am up, active, moving around. Do you think that the temperature in this room feels the same to me as it does to you guys sitting over there? No, you're thinking it's colder than I do. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, what do you think the temperature feels like to her? Yeah, she isn't even as dressed as you are. And she's covered with a thin sheet. So she's already cold. She's probably feeling a little less than dressed. All she's got on is a thin hospital gown. She's not really dressed for company, right? So she's feeling cold and probably a little vulnerable. Now, how does she feel? Yeah. I know that I'm dressing this patient. The patient knows that I'm dressing the patient, but this is not going to work. We have to understand that privacy has to be approached from the patient point of view, not our point of view, because it's always about the patient. So instead of pulling that sheet down and exposing this patient, even though I'm dressing her, I'm going to use a privacy blanket. So we use this anytime the patient is. So Miss Jones, I'm going to spread this blanket out over you. It's going to keep you warm and protect your privacy while we do this skill. So I'm going to unfold the blanket. We don't snap it. You probably do this at home, right? Something like this. See all those little fuzzies that came up there? Those are dead skin cells, yeast, bacteria, all kinds of stuff that shed off this patient into the bed. And by snapping the blanket, I'm bringing it right up here where I can breathe it in. That's right. We are giving it a mode of transportation. That is correct. So you probably don't want to do that. You probably don't want to aerosolize all of the things that have fallen off the patient. So when we're spreading out the privacy blanket, we simply want to unfold it and spread it while we're laying it out. Now, once I've got the patient covered with a privacy blanket, then I can pull the sheet down underneath, and the patient is going to be way more comfortable with this than they were with no sheet. This helps protect them from me, the stranger in the room. Good. Okay. So the patient should never be uncovered. We should put the privacy blanket on first and pull the sheet down under. When we're ready at the end of the skill to take the privacy blanket away, we're going to pull the sheet up over the blanket and then remove the blanket. So the patient always remains covered. Good. Anything that gets removed from the bed is going to be balled up so that no trailing edges can contaminate other surfaces. If I just pull this off the bed like this, if I just pull this off the bed, now I've got a huge thing that I'm not controlling that can spread pathogens everywhere. So anything we remove from the bed, we're going to roll up in a ball as we take it away. Good? Questions? No? Okay. Now the last one I want to talk about is this guy. Oh, spread it this. Can you move it this way? Thanks. I know. There we go. Yeah, camera lady. All right. So the last part I want to talk to you about right here is get clothes before undressing. That's an actual checkpoint. That means that people don't get clothes before undressing the patient. So how do you think the patient would feel if you got them completely undressed and then left? Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking uncomfortable would probably be like near the top of the list. Yeah. What exactly is happening? Right? They're in a strange place surrounded by strange people and they're not dressed for company. It's a little unnerving. So this is a graded checkpoint. You have to make sure that you get the clothes before you undress the patient. The fact that they even had to make that a checkpoint to me was like, really? But apparently it's a step that gets missed enough that it ended up being on the checklist. Not my student. Not my student. My students don't do that because you think about things from the patient's point of view. My students don't do that. All right. So here's our banner. So I want to kind of stop here for just a second and remind you that we've learned skill rules, right? We follow the care plan, the whole care plan, and we learned the opening. Every skill starts with the opening. Every opening starts with a knock. We learned the closing. There's 6 C's to the closing. Comfort, curtain, call light, clean environment, open the curtain, and clean your hands, right? So we learned the closing. That's at the end of every skill. We learned all that on Monday. Today, we've learned to use a barrier on the table. If we're going to use supplies, it's the first thing we get. We've learned when to use gloves if we're going to touch anything ooey gooey, personal skin, or non-intact skin. And we've learned a little bit about basin cleaning. We're going to rinse it, dry it, and store it, right? No worries, no worries. Have a great day. Okay. So now we're going to add to it privacy blanket, which is this. So if you're looking on that back wall now, we've got skill rules, opening, barrier, glove rules, privacy blanket, basin cleaning, and closing. 7 out of the 11 already done. Remember I told you that you were going to learn all of that? Yeah. And it wasn't hard, was it? Okay, we still have a couple more to go, and they get a little bit more complex as we get into them, but it's still a very easy way to learn because of the way that I'm teaching it. Okay, good. So our privacy blanket, we're going to use anytime our patient is uncovered or undressed. We're going to make sure that we don't snap it or shake it when we put it on the patient. And remember, there's two reasons for using it. Number one, to keep the patient warm, and number two, to protect their privacy. And then at the end of the skill, we're going to pull the sheet up over the blanket and remove it. And we want to do that after we remove our gloves, because we have to touch that sheet. And if your gloves are all icky, you don't want to touch that sheet that's going to go right up next to their face with dirty gloves. Okay. Good. Questions? Okay. So here is our banner for this skill. Remember, you don't have this in your book. You have step-by-step instructions. So if you look on page 71, these instructions, excuse me, would be, you know, this will take care of these instructions. But we do have this in our flashcards. So for this particular skill, we're going to use skill rules because we follow the care plan. We're going to use the opening. We'll evaluate if we need gloves. Evaluate. So on the mannequin, I'm not going to be anywhere near their private areas. I'm not going to be touching any body fluids, and the mannequin has no open areas. So do I need gloves for this skill? If my patient was incontinent or unable to hold their urine, would I need gloves for this skill? You guys see how we evaluate that? We're going to use a barrier because we need a place to put our clothes. We're going to use a privacy blanket to protect the patient from us. We're not going to hold the clothing or the privacy blanket or anything up against our uniform because our uniform is not clean. We're going to follow these instructions, which I'll go over in a minute, and we're going to do the closing. So instead of on page 66, or I'm sorry, 71, you see there's 23 steps there. That's a lot. There's 23 steps to getting dressed. That's a lot. And if you try to memorize them all, you'll get overwhelmed. But instead of memorizing that, let's memorize 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps. That's more manageable, isn't it? Right? Because we know what this stands for. We know what this stands for. We know what this stands for. So that's why this puzzle process makes the skills easy to learn. 23 steps, 8 steps. I'll take 8 all day long. Okay. So let's see what this step entails. Well, we have to ask about clothing preference. We talked about that. We want to get clothing before undressing. Oh, we talked about that too. We're going to support all joints when lifting. Why would we need to do that? Yeah, we want to prevent injury. Yeah, so we want to support anything that we lift. But it's not just for the weak ones. We want to support anything that we lift. And when we lift anything, we always want to lift from below with a flat palm. So we're not the claw machine at Walmart, you know, where you reach down and grab something and bring it over and drop it. We're not going to do that. You always want to lift from below, because when you lift from above, your fingertips can cause bruising and tissue injury, but you can also lose your grip and the extremity can fall. When you're supporting from below, there's no injury at all. So we always support from below. And that's going to be important because we have to put socks on. You're going to have to lift that leg up to get the sock over the heel. Right? USA first, we heard that. Undress strong arm first, dress weak arm first. When we dress the weak arm, you're going to gather the sleeve, and I'm going to show you in the video how to do that. Pay real close attention to how I dress that weak arm. Because anybody have children? Oh man, my first kid, I made all the mistakes on. All of them. Don't tell him I said that. Okay. Yeah, but it's trial and error, right? And when you got a little squirmy baby and you try to get clothes on them, sometimes if you're not paying attention, their fingers can, you know, kind of get bent backwards, right? Well, so I learned quick. I didn't ever do that again on anybody else or him again. But yeah, once I did kind of bend his finger back and then he squalled and I got all upset and I learned a lesson. I'd rather you learn that lesson in here before it's an adult that's squalling, right? So when we put clothing on somebody else, if we're not paying attention, it's really, really easy to get a finger bent backwards or a wrist backwards if we're not watching what we're doing. So we're going to gather that sleeve up, put our hand in backwards, and then we're going to hold the patient's hand like we're shaking their hand. All those fingers together and just slide the sleeve off of my arm onto theirs. And it prevents injury. So watch how I do that in the video. We don't want to overextend or force movement. We're going to adjust clothing because remember, neatness counts. We're going to put dirty items in hamper. Duh. Duh. And we're going to make sure the call light is in the stronger hand. Why would that be a checkpoint? Yeah, if the other one's weak, they may not be able to use it. So call light has to be in the stronger hand, and that is a graded checkpoint. Okay, so let me go ahead and yeah, can you just kind of bring this into frame for me? There you go. That's good. I'm going to try to get this thing paired up well. Okay, so if you remember at the bottom of the page, it told us that we had 14 minutes to get our patient dressed. If you look here, dressing, I get it done in 7, and that includes the the intro and the credits. So plenty of time. Do not rush. Do not rush.
Okay, I'm going to close your door. Let me know what my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. The first thing that I'll get is a barrier to put on my table to make sure that my supplies remain clean. Mrs. Jones, what would you like to wear today? Your light pink pants and dark pink shirt? Okay. Is this the outfit that you described? Wonderful. I'll get a privacy blanket as well. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to throw the privacy blanket out over you. This will keep you warm and help protect your privacy as you do this still. I'm going to carefully unfold the blanket. Be careful not to snap or shake it. And then lay it out over. Once the blanket's in place, I'll pull your sheet down to the end of the bed. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to place your socks on now. We'll take one of the socks, stretch it all the way up to the toe seam, put it over the foot, making sure the toe seam is lined up, lift from below and support the ankle, smooth the sock over the heel. Now we'll go to the other side. We'll stretch this sock up, put it over the foot, making sure the toe seam is lined up, lift from below and support the ankle, and smooth the sock over the heel, minimizing wrinkles. Now we'll help you put your pants on. We're going to make sure the tag is in the back. I'm going to insert one of my arms into the legs of the pants and stretch it up so I have control over all the material. We'll then place it over your foot, lift from below, and smooth it over your heel. I'm going to repeat on the side. I'm going to put my hand inside and straighten up the leg of the pants. And then place it over your foot. Lifting from below and supporting at the heel. while we finish putting on your pants. Okay, Mrs. Jones. Now I'm going to lift your pants up over your hips. If I can have you raise up your hips as high as you can on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I'll make sure that your pants are over your hips and then cover you back up. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to elevate the head of the bed now. Please tell me when you're comfortable. And if I can assist you to lean forward, I'll untie your gown. Thank you. I'm going to tuck a corner of the blanket behind your back as you sit back. And now I'll remove the gown from this side. We're going to undress the strong arm first. Since our care plan indicated your right arm is weak, we'll undress your left arm first. I'm going to the other side of the bed now. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to undress this arm. Being careful to minimize the movement and support the arm at the elbow as I lift it off the bed. We'll remove the soiled gown. We'll go ahead and rest your arm back on the bed. Okay, now I'm going to assist you with your shirt. I'm going to scrunch up the arm of the sleeve and put my hand through backwards, keeping your arm supported on the bed. I'm going to lift your hand and hold it as if we're shaking hands. This will keep all your fingers together as we place the sleeve over my hand and then over yours. Once we have the sleeve in place on your arm, we'll extend your arm out. I'll support at the elbow as I bring the sleeve the rest of the way along your arm. If I can have you sit forward, Miss Jones, let me assist you. Thank you. Make sure that you remain covered and smooth the shirt along your back. Come on back, Mrs. Jones. Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to assist you in putting your other arm in your sleeve. So I'll scrunch it up. Put my hand in through backwards. And Miss Jones, if I could have you reach your arm up and back for me. I'll assist you to put your arm in the sleeve. Okay, Miss Jones, we'll rest your arm back on the bed now while I straighten your shirt and make sure that it is snapped appropriately. Okay, let me just adjust your clothing to make sure it's neat. Can I have you lean forward for me, please? Thank you. And I'll make sure that this blanket can be removed. Okay, Ms. James, I'm just going to gather up your privacy blanket and place it in soiled linen along with your gown. I'll be right back. Okay, Mrs. James, I'm just going to adjust your clothing for neatness and appearance and make sure that it's fastened appropriately and that you look good. Very nice. Okay, you have your call light here if you should need anything. Can I get a magazine for you? Okay, I'm just going to throw your barrier away and open your privacy curtain. Now we'll go wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then tell the evaluator my skill is done. All right. Any questions on dressing? Questions on dressing? No? Am I going too fast for anybody? All right, let's move on. Let's go to page 35.
Okay, so page 35, how do we know what to do with each patient? The care plan. So the top of the care plan, or top of page 35, our care plan tells us patient will be lying in bed for the skill. Take the patient's radial pulse. That's very specific. Radial pulse measured at the wrist for 1 full minute and record our readings. Can we take any other pulse for this patient? No, has to be the radial pulse. Why? Easy answer. Care plan says. Care plan says. Now, I'm going to tell you that this is one of the most failed skills on the state exam. And it's because people don't understand the importance of the care plan. They either don't take the radial pulse, they use a different pulse, or they don't count for 1 full minute. There's not very many checkpoints here. So if you miss 1 or 2, they're going to count big because there's not very many checkpoints. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So if you look at the bottom of the page here, you'll see that you have somebody with your level of experience, which is none, should be able to complete this task within 5 minutes or less. You don't have to take the whole 5 minutes. You can do less, but you should be able to count a pulse within 5 minutes or less. You only have to count for a minute. Put an opening in front of it, put a closing behind it, and it still shouldn't take you 5 minutes. Good. This is going to be done on a live testing student. That means that you may be a patient for this skill. It tells you the patient is lying in bed. So that means for the test, they may ask you to go lay in that bed and you're just going to lay there. That's it. Pretty easy to be a patient for this one. Documentation is required for this. So when would we document? Okay, at the end, after washing your hands. What do you need to do after you document? Wash your hands again. So you're starting to see how the things that I taught you on Monday, we're going to use again. And you know what? Next week, we're going to use them again. And the following week, we're going to use them again. So by the time I'm done with you in 4 weeks, it's going to be virtually impossible for you to fail the test because I am in your brain. You're going to hear me over and over and over. And this is how we have such a good pass rate on the state exam. But it's more important than just being good at the test. I want to make sure you're good out there in a clinical setting as well. So although you may get sick of hearing me say the same things over and over and over again, my goal is to make it so relevant to you that when you're out there working, you would never think about doing it a different way. Your brain's going to go, but Miss Patti said. All right. So we have our instructions here. We're going to count the radial pulse measured at the wrist for 1 full minute. So in order to do that, we got to know what is a pulse. Well, you have a heart on the left side of your chest. And when your heart squeezes, it pushes out a wave of blood. That wave pushes the one in front of it. That wave pushes the one in front of it. That wave pushes the one in front of it. And this is how blood moves through your circulatory system in waves. Well, in between the waves are valleys. So this looks just like the ocean. If I were to cut a hole in an artery, that's exactly what it would look like moving through. Now, even slasher movies get this right. Anybody ever watch slasher movies, like the really violent ones, right? Blood spurts like this. Wave, valley, wave, valley, wave, valley, wave, valley. Okay. What we want to do, since we know that the heart squeezing is what's making the waves, what we want to do is count the waves. That's all a pulse is. We're counting the waves that we feel underneath our fingers. So if you push down on the top of an artery, you can actually feel the waves as they move under your fingers. That's what a pulse is. We're feeling the waves. So when we're counting a pulse, we're going to find a pulse, right? Fingers have to be over the artery. And then you're going to feel those waves move underneath your fingers, and we're going to count them. A wave moves through 1, 2, 3, 4. You're counting the thumps you feel under your fingers. How long are we counting for? Okay, that's a problem. Because if you look at that clock while you're counting, your brain is going to count the seconds. It just will. Your brain is hardwired to count what it feels first, then what it sees, then what it hears. So if I'm sorry, I said that backwards. It counts what you see first, then hear, then feel. So if you're looking at that clock, as the second hand goes around, you're trying to count those thumps under your fingers. But if you're staring there, your brain will eventually switch to counting the seconds. So you can't stare at the clock. So how in the world are you going to count for 1 full minute and know it's 1 full minute without staring at the clock? Well, in order to do this, you're going to pick your starting point, and then you're going to look away. And you're just going to glance up now and then to see where you are. A normal pulse rate is between 60 and 100. That's normal, between 60 and 100. So I can get to like 45 before I even look up at the clock again to see where I'm at. Now, everybody know how to count a minute on a clock like this? Because this is the kind of clock you're going to have in a clinical setting. It's the kind of clock you'll have for the test, and there's going to be one right above the bed. It's an analog clock. So where the second hand is when you start counting, you're going to count until the second hand gets all the way back to that point. If you want to wait and start with the second hand on the 12, you can. Perfectly okay. But that's a long wait. So let's say that I'm getting ready to count the pulse. I found the pulse. I'm waiting. If I'm waiting for that second hand to get all the way back to the 12, oh my gosh, it's only on the 4. It's going to be a long wait, right? You don't have to wait until that second hand is on the 12 to start. You can start with the second hand on any number. The problem is you have to remember the number that the second hand was on when you started. That's the trick. So I actually have a trick I use because I learned sign language early in my life. I know that to count to 10 on one hand, you can count to 10 on one hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We all know that. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when I look at that clock, if I want to start on a number other than 12, this hand is on the pulse. This is my counting hand because I'm right-handed. This is my counting hand on the pulse. This hand is going to keep track of my time. So if I start counting on the 5, my hand is going to be like this. If I start counting on the 1, my hand will be like this. If I start counting on the 10, my hand will be like this. This hand always keeps track of where I start, what number I started on. So I don't have to remember. My hand is remembering for me. I never, ever start on the 11. I'll just wait till the 12. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Good? Okay. So when you're counting the pulse, we're going to press down on the pulse. We're going to count the thumps we feel under our finger for 1 full minute. Where is a pulse? Well, a pulse is located at the very top of your wrist. So we don't use our thumb to take a pulse. You're going to use 2 fingers, and it's going to be way up here at the very top of your wrist, not down here. You got a lot of muscle and tissue and stuff. Remember that we are trying to feel, let me go back one. We are trying to feel a wave of blood inside an artery buried under muscle, fat, and tissue. This is not a big thump. It's just not. So you want to make sure that you're in the thinnest tissue possible to be able to pick this up. So right here at the lines of your wrist, like way up here, right, like right near your palm, that's where your tissue is the thinnest. So we don't use our thumb to take a pulse. We're going to use 2 fingers. If you take 2 fingers, the easiest way to find your own pulse, put your hand out like you're going to shake somebody's hand, thumb up. There's a bone that runs right on the top of your wrist. Find that bone, like right where your palm ends. Find that bone. Find the bone. Feel it? Put 2 fingers on your bone. Stand them up like you're going to dive off a cliff, and then just roll them forward. Put your thumb on the back. You should have your pulse. You should have your pulse. Anybody have thumbs? You have thumbs? Have thumbs? 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 Good. Got a pulse? Okay, that's where your pulse is. So we're going to stay up toward the palm, not down here. Stay up toward the palm where the lines are, and it's the very top of the thumb side of your wrist. Don't use your thumb to take a pulse. Your thumb has its own artery. You'll end up getting your own pulse, which doesn't help us. Now, troubleshooting here. When you put your fingers there, you may feel the pulse. If I just lay my fingers here, I might feel the pulse if I get lucky. The problem is that a minute is a very long time, and your fingers are going to relax. Whether you want them to or not, they will relax. And when they relax, you're going to lose the pulse. It'll go away. To keep that from happening, if you take your thumb and put it on the back of the wrist, so your fingers are in a C shape, that holds consistent pressure, and your fingers are less likely to relax. You'll actually feel the thumps better, but more consistently, so you won't lose it. Okay? Good. Make sure your thumb is on the back side of the wrist. So yeah, so our patient's going to be laying in bed. We're going to find the pulse, and you can be on either side of the bed, doesn't matter. Pick a side, whatever works for you. You're going to be on one side of the bed. You're going to find the pulse. Make sure the elbow is supported on the bed. Like, don't have their arm up in the air like this. The elbow needs to be supported. But we need to make sure that you're accurate. That means on the other side of the bed, on the other wrist, is going to be the who? Yeah, the evaluator. That's right. Yep. So you're on one side taking the pulse, the evaluator's on the other side taking the pulse. You have to let them know when you start to count so they can start at the same time. You have to let them know when you stop counting so they can stop at the same time. And hopefully you'll get the same number. But you can be off a little bit and still be accurate. You can be off by 4 beats in either direction and still be accurate. So let's say that as the evaluator, I got 76. Remember, 60 to 100 is normal. I got 76. If you got 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, or 80, you are considered accurate. It's a big margin of error, guys. Really big. But you have to let them know when you start counting and when you stop counting, so they're counting in the same time period that you are. So for this skill, you're going to do your opening. Knock, knock, knock. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. I'm here to get your vital signs. Is that okay? You can say vital signs or pulse, whatever you want. I'm going to close your curtain, wash my hands. I'll be right back. When you come back, pick a side of the bed. Now me, because I'm right-handed, I can be on this side of the bed, but it's going to require a different hold. So if I'm on this side of the bed and I'm right-handed, I'm going to be coming over the wrist and trying to elevate. This is awkward, isn't it? That's really awkward. If I keep the hand on the bed, I got to bend. And then it's a long time to be bending like this. It's much easier if the arm is up, but it also means that I'm going to have a different hold so that I'm not awkward. Instead of going this way, when I bring the arm up, I'm going to go this way. So like a guitar hold. Okay. Now, if I were on the other side, let's see if I can get this to work now. Yay, it's fixed. It's fixed. Okay. So if I were on this side of the bed and I've got the arm elevated, I'm not going to go up from below. Remember, I'm right-handed. This is my right hand. I'm just going to be able to come in from the top. So it depends on which side of the bed you feel more comfortable on. The only way to know, guys, is to practice. If I were testing, I would want to be on this side of the bed. For me, some of you may be more comfortable on that side of the bed. You have to find what works for you, because you get first dibs. The evaluator will take whatever's left over.
Supporting the hand too with the other hand.
Well, kind of. Pulling your shirt up here. Kind of. The elbow is being supported on the bed. And yeah, I just, out of habit, I probably would hold their hand just, you know, because I'm nice. Does that make sense? Everybody got it? How long are you counting for? Okay. So knock, knock, knock. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. I'm here to take your vital signs. Is that okay? I'm going to close your curtain, wash my hands, come back over to the bed. I'm going to find the pulse, keep the elbows supported on the bed, pick a starting point on the clock and say start. I'm going to count for 1 full minute and say, I can get for you while I'm here. Get your sheet arranged. Remember, you always leave your patient looking better than you found them. So arrange the sheet. Are you comfortable? Would you like a magazine before I go? Is there anything else I can get for you? Here's your call light. If you need anything, just let me know. Make sure the environment is clean. There you go. Okay, if you need anything, let me know. I'm going to open the curtain, wash my hands, opening, skill, closing, 5 minutes. Notice most of this skill is not about counting. Most of it is your opening and your closing. Good? Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay, so what we're going to do here, I'm going to ask you to come sit in this chair if you would. And I'm going to have you around so you're facing both of them. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to have you turn around and face them. And then I'm going to ask you. Come sit right here. Okay, so you guys are all arranged in groups of 3. It's worked out perfectly. So the people, you and you, right? You are the patient right now. And you're going to put both of your arms on the table. You're going to find the pulse on one arm. You're going to find the pulse on the other. You're going to find the pulse on one arm. You're going to find the pulse on the other. You'll find the pulse on one arm. You'll find the pulse on the other. You'll find the pulse on one arm. You'll find the pulse on the other. Go ahead and find the pulse on your patient. When you have the pulse, remember the thumb goes on the back for consistent pressure. When you find the pulse, I want you to take your other hand and just put it up for me so I know who needs help. When you find the pulse, put your hand up so I know that you have the pulse. Okay, you're on the pinky side. We need to be on the thumb side. No, are you right-handed or left-handed? Okay, so we're going to take our right hand, 2 fingers, and put it right there. thumb on the back, and you got to put a little pressure on there. Relax for me. Got it? All right. Everybody good? Everybody good? All right. I'm going to say start in just a second, and you are going to count the thumbs you feel under your finger until I say stop. You're going to compare your readings to whatever your partner got, and we'll see how close you guys are. Ready, set, start. Stop. What'd you get?
63, 64, 63, 63.
What'd you get? Okay. All right. How long was that minute? Oh my gosh. It is so long, and it's really easy to lose track of your count because, yeah, exactly. Yep. Right. So you've got the anxiety to deal with as well. So the name of the game, guys, is practice. Practice is super important with this skill. And the nice thing is you can practice this on anybody in your orbit. When you're watching TV tonight, just reach over and hold somebody's hand, right? But take their pulse. Yeah, you can practice this in a lot of different ways. Okay, so stay where you are. We're not done. Stay where you are. But I do want to go over the rules for pulse. Now that you've practiced it once, these rules will make a little bit more sense to you. So we're always going to support the arm. Don't leave the arms hanging in midair because that actually affects the pulse rate. Activity will make the pulse rate go higher, and this is activity. We don't want to use our thumb to take the pulse. We're going to use our fingertips, not the flat part. Your nerve endings are much more sensitive at the tops of your fingers than they are on the flat part of your fingers. So if you're having trouble finding the pulse, instead of having your fingers flat like that, have them elevated like that. So you're using your fingertips. Radial pulse is on the top of the thumb side of the wrist near the bone. We're always going to report it over 1 minute, normal 60 to 100. We're going to say start and stop for the evaluator, and we'll document. I'm doing the timing for you for this exercise. Remember, for the test, you will do the timing as well. So one of the two, you are now the patient. You guys are both counting. You are now the patient. You guys are both counting. You're the patient. You're both counting. You're the patient. You're both counting. So patient, put your arms out. Find the pulse. So you want to be up on the thumb side, not the pinky. You're good. You're down on the pinky side. So, no, you're right. You're right. Right here. Thumb on the back. Thumb on the back. You're going to be, yeah, put a little pressure on you. You feel the thumps? Okay. So, all right, hold on. So yeah, this got a little more complex, right? Because now where do we put our fingers? That's upside down.
I know.
So we're going to go from the top. So we're going to bend our fingers, put our thumb in the back. There we go. You got it? You guys got it? Got it? Got it? Everybody good? Ready to count? Ready, set, start. Stop. What'd you get? Oh, no, 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 I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Okay. Okay. Okay, good, good, good. All right, if you're more than 4 beats off, you need to practice just a little bit more. If you're within that 4 beat, you've got it down. Practice is going to help you refine it. So last person is now the patient. So put your arms out. Okay, when so you're going to want to be up more toward the thumb. So see how you're at the pinky? We want to be way up here at the thumb.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, everybody ready? Everybody have the pulse. Ready, set, start. Stop. What'd you get? What'd you guys get?
94.
Okay. Okay, very good. All right, you guys can resume your normal seats. You can just leave it there. It's fine. All right, so to recap what we've learned today, we learned how to use barriers. We learned when to use gloves. We learned about privacy blankets, and we learned not to hold things up against our uniforms because our uniforms are not clean. We reviewed skill rules because we follow the care plan, and the opening and the closing, right? We learned 3 whole skills today. We learned mouth care, dressing a resident, and pulse. We covered a lot of ground. We learned how the immune system works. We learned the chain of infection. We learned the principles that govern dressing residents with weak arms. And we covered a lot of ground. Is anybody lost? Did I go too fast? Is there anything you need me to review? We are going to come back to some of these topics a little later on in the program. We're going to talk about the chain of infection again when we talk about standard precautions and transmission-based precautions a little bit later. But I do want to bring to your attention page 29. This is not something we're going to cover in the class, but it's something that you need to be familiar with. Some of you do not know military time, and that's okay. You don't need to know it for the test. You don't have to use it for the test. You can use regular time, but when you document pulse, you're going to have to put the time that you took the pulse. If you use regular time, you have to put AM or PM. Have to. If you use military time, we don't use AM or PM. Now, to me, military time just makes so much more sense. How many hours are in a day? We all agree there's 24 hours in the day. Who was the bozo somewhere along the line that said, I only want to count till 12 and then let's start over? There's 24 hours in a day. Let's use them all. So instead of stopping at 12 and starting over again at 1, which doesn't make any sense, just keep going. So instead of starting over at 1, we would go to 13 and then 14 and then 15 and then 16 and then 17 and then 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And then we're going to go back to 0 because it's a brand new day. Make sense? That's all military time is. We just don't start over at 1. So don't let it intimidate you. It's not intimidating. We just keep going. Don't start over at 1. So anything afternoon, you would add 4, or I'm sorry, add 12 to the number. So if it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we would add 12 to it to get 16, right? Military time, no AM or PM required because we're using all 24 hours. No colon is required either. We just use 4 numbers all smushed together. No AM or PM or colon. 4 numbers all smushed together. We have the hour and the minutes all together. So 4:24 in the morning would be 0424 because you have to have 4 numbers. 4:24 in the afternoon would be 16:24. Good. That's all military time is. But there's a worksheet here that you can use to kind of brush up on your military time skills. You don't need it for the test, but most clinical settings, because healthcare runs 24 hours a day, most clinical settings do use. Okay, good. Most, yes, most, not all, but most of the rest of the world operates on military. No, I think there's probably, I think there's 10 or 12 countries that use this time. I think it's Roman time is what they call it. But most other places are like, hey, there's 24 hours. Let's use them all. That kind of makes more sense to me personally. I'm just not real sure why they thought we could only count till 12. All right. Any other questions on what we've gone over today? Like I said, we are coming back to a lot of these topics. You're going to hear me talk about them a little bit more as we go. We're going to get into linen rules in quite a bit of detail. You do need to bring your blood pressure cuffs and stethoscopes to class with you on Monday because we are going to learn blood pressure on Monday. So the answer to that is yes and no. Okay. Everything that I tell you could show up on the written exam in some way. But you definitely need all that knowledge to work effectively. So even though it may not be on the test, you need it to, you need to know it for work. But, oh no, I don't do in-class tests. I'm not going to give you any pop quizzes. I don't do tests because for me, it's not about tests. It's about comprehension. I don't care about test grades. I'm the only teacher in the world that doesn't care about tests.
So rare.
But I want you to make sure that you understand the information. So I'm putting this on you. If you feel like you're struggling, it's why I ask a million times, do you have any questions? If you feel like you're struggling, you've got to let me know. But that's what the chapter tests are. So tonight you're going to have 2 chapters to read in the yellow book. You're going to read chapters 2 and 3. And guys, they're longer and they're way more boring. So break up your study periods into small sections. Study for 10 to 15 minutes. Go do something else. Go walk the dog, wash the dishes, do some laundry, watch a movie, whatever, because that gives your brain time to digest what you just read. If you keep cramming more in and your brain hasn't had a chance to catalog what it just read, you're not going to remember it. So study should always be done in brief sessions with mindless activity in between, because that lets your brain digest. Okay, yeah, 15-minute intervals,
Chapter 2.
2 and 3. So over the weekends, you always have 2 chapters. On Mondays, you always have 1. Okay, good. All right. So let me give you your review sheets. You're welcome. These are your review sheets for today. Those of you that are joining us from YouTube world, you can see these review sheets in lesson 1 of our online course. So lesson 1 of the online course. Next week, on Wednesday, I'll be going over the test registration packets with you. I'm going to pass them out. We'll go over them together in class. You will register when you want to register. It's the class and the registration are not tied together, but I'll give you the instructions. If you register at the end of next week, when I give you the registration packets, you should be testing about a week or 2 after graduation, which is perfect timing. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. You are free to go. Have some fun this weekend. Okay, so come over to my desk. Okay, let me just turn all this off this way. So we're not broadcasting anything.
Oh, no. I just know like for you,